you? Doing very well. Just come by and say hello.
Hey, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you doing?
How are you? Good.
Thank you. Look forward to talking with them.
Okay, absolutely. How you doing? Well, you heard about Bill, right? Yeah. Yes, sir. I know. How you doing?
How are you?
Yeah. This is Commissioner Preston. Right. Oh, no, you're fine. Hello, sir. Okay. Very good. How you doing?
In the nick of time.
Doing very well. And stay at 12.
I came prepared anything.
I'm sorry.
I don't see it.
Yeah, it's weird.
You gotta lower the pace. That's pretty good.
So we're halfway there. You're not our Florida lead. Are you our Florida lead? Mike, do you want to do item number 2? Since you're our rep. Hi, how are you? Excellent to see you. Absolutely.
Just how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Was this say somebody?
So we're gonna move it up above number 3. We're gonna move up, let's see. We'll move up 18 and 19.
Do those people on Zoom watch it?
No, these are 4 items. You guys ready? Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to call to order the regular city commission meeting for this July 12th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Will we please have roll call?
Commissioner Drosky,
Here.
Commissioner Parnas, Commissioner Preston,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hudak,
Here.
and Mayor Yance.
Here, I'd like to say that Commissioner Parnas is out today with an excused absence due to illness. Could everyone please stand for a moment of silence and our pledge of allegiance? Before we do our moment of silence, I just ask everybody to keep in mind, Jim Lusk is a longtime Deerfield Beach resident. He was also in charge of the Observer newspaper for many years. Jim passed away a few weeks ago. He was a huge contributor to this community, and he's been deeply missed. So please remember him in your thoughts today. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have approval of our city commission meeting minutes from the regular city commission meeting minutes of June 21st, 2022. Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Acknowledgement of our city board meeting minutes for our Community Redevelopment Agency of April 12, 2022. Hillsborough Inlet District meetings minutes for May 16, 2022. Education Advisory Board of March 2nd and April 6th of this year. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting minutes from October 11th, November 8th of 2021, and February 7th of 2022, and our code compliance meeting minutes from May 10th, 2022.
Motion approved.
Second. Motion by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Preston. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The approval of our agenda tonight for July 12th, 2022. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have. I'm sorry. Yes, we do have a request to move up items 18 and 19 before item number 3. That could be included in the motion, as well as I understand that we have a tabling. Which item is that? 5. Of item number 5.
So amended for the second.
Okay. Your motion amend that?
Yes.
Okay, so we amended the motion with those changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Madam Clerk.
For members of the public wishing to provide comments during tonight's meeting, 3 minutes will be provided. However, 1 additional minute will be granted by Mayor Cantz. Anyone connected online using video must cover the mouth at the bottom of the screen. Click the participant tab on the right, click raise hand. You'll be recognized by your profile name and your audio will be unmuted. For anyone participating via mobile or landline, dial *9 to raise your hand. You will be recognized by the last 3 digits of your number. You may dial *6 if necessary to unmute. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We have the privilege tonight of having Dr. Vicki Cartwright, the superintendent of Broward County Schools, to be here to talk about some items on the educational campaign. Dr. Cartwright.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Mayor Phil Gantz, Vice Mayor Ben Preston, Commissioners, and the City of Deerfield Beach residents for welcome today. I'm Broward County Public Schools, Dr. Vicki Cartwright, Superintendent. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Jermaine Fleming. He is now the North Area Regional Superintendent, and Dr. Fleming oversees schools in the North area, including your schools here in Deerfield Beach. So I wanted to make sure that you put a face with a name, and wanted to make sure that you would actually know who you're talking to when you see him, and that he does carry a lot of weight up here in the North area. So on behalf of the school board, thank you to the City of Deerfield Beach for partnering with Broward County Public Schools. Your support has been a great benefit to our students within the schools of Deerfield Beach. And we are especially grateful for your partnership as it relates to school safety and our SRO program. At Broward County Public Schools, our focus is students first. Our priorities include increasing teacher and staff compensation to attract and retain highly qualified employees, ensuring safer learning environments, and investing in mental health services for our students and families. To achieve these goals, our district is once again presenting voters with a Secure the Next Generation referendum, which will appear on the August 23rd primary election ballot. The original half-mil referendum voters approved back in 2018 is set to expire. Without this renewal, funding for more than 500 school safety personnel and 100 mental health professionals will be lost, and over $80 million annually in competitive compensation supplements for our teachers and eligible staff will no longer exist. Under the current referendum, the average teacher receives about $4,600 in supplements above their salary. Eligible staff include frontline workers such as our teaching assistants, bus drivers, attendants, cafeteria workers, as well as our custodial staff. Renewing the Secure the Next Generation referendum would increase voters' investment in education from a half millage to 1 millage. This will allow us to continue securing funds for all public schools to attract and maintain quality personnel at a similar rate as to our neighboring school districts. Currently, the Miami-Dade County Public Schools is at 0.75 mil, and the school district of Palm Beach County is currently at 1 mil. Also, due to new legislation from the last time our voters approved to where we are today, 20% of all generated funds from the referendum will now be shared with charter schools. While charters are not required to spend their funds at the percentage that we would, they will be required to spend it based on the 3 buckets listed within the ballot language, which is school safety personnel, supplements for the workforce, and mental health personnel. Renewing the Secure the Next Generation referendum would generate approximately $177 million for Broward County Public Schools and $45 million for charter schools, for a combined total of approximately $227 million annually. It would be broken down in to the following allocation as approved by the school board. 75% or more would be used for recruiting and retaining high-quality teachers and eligible staff by increasing compensation supplements. Up to 14% for additional school resource officers and safety staff, and up to 8% to enhance essential programs such as mental health services. We know that it is a financial burden for cities to fund the SRO program. Based on the current referendum, we were able to increase our contributions from approximately 54,000 to about 62,000. If the renewal passes, I am fully committed to bringing a proposal to the school board to continue to increase this contribution. Of course, this will only happen if the renewal were able to pass. So what does this mean to you, to your constituents, to our community? Based on the 2021 numbers, for the average homeowner with a home market value of $393,755 for 2021, and a school board taxable value of $274,220, they would invest approximately $274 that year, or $23 a month, which is an additional $11.50 more than what the current investment is. For the average condo owner with a condo market value of approximately $192,806 for 2021, and a school board taxable value of approximately $158,421, they would invest approximately $158 a year, which equates to $13 a month, which is an additional $6.50 more than what their current investment is. We'd like to recognize the Secure the Next Generation referendum is not related to the SMART bond program, which passed in 2014. This referendum is meant for people, and it's about people, not about things. SMART bond funds strictly provide funding for critical maintenance needs and capital improvements to buildings. Again, this referendum funds people. The SMART bond funds cannot be used for compensation or non-capital expenses. Additionally, there was a third-party independent audit completed on the current referendum and how we spent the money as stated in the ballot language. And the audit noted that the district expended the funds as approved by voters on the ballot. Again, the referendum approved by the voters in 2018 is expiring in 2023. So this is going to be replacing the expiring referendum. Once again, thank you so much for your support of public education and for the Broward County Public Schools. And for anyone who would like to learn more information about Secure the Next Generation referendum, you can visit thebrowardschools.com/secure. In closing, again, I just want to state that I just shared is only to educate and to inform you regarding this ballot initiative and not to tell anyone how to vote. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Doctor, thank you so much for being here. Gentlemen, do you have any questions? I think we're good right now.
All right, thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. I'm going to have the Vice Mayor do the honors since he is our representative for the Florida League of Cities.
Appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. A proclamation in recognition of the Florida League of Cities 100th anniversary. Florida League governments have a rich history of uniting with one statewide voice on issues relating to municipal governments, and by uniting this voice in national and statewide issues, there can be a clear message. This united voice has been centered within the statewide municipal association known as the Florida League of Cities. The league grew from humble beginnings in 1922 and has become one of the largest municipal associations in the nation. The FLC provides a forum for municipal leaders to share ideas, find common ground, and develop best practices. The league provides resources to assist cities, towns, and villages, and these members can count on the league to provide various programs, products, and services. In 1968, the FLC undertook a fight for home rule powers that were placed into the Florida Constitution, and the FLC has been a defender of these powers on behalf of all municipal governments across the Sunshine State. 2022 marks the 100-year anniversary of the Florida League of Cities, and it is a tremendous milestone worth of commendation and celebration. The city of Deerfield Beach recognizes and proclaims the centennial anniversary of the Florida League of Cities.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Is there anyone from the Florida League of Cities here tonight?
Hi, Mayor.
Oh, yes, we do.
Can you hear me?
No, we're having a little hard time hearing you.
I'm trying to speak a little louder. Are you able to hear me now?
It's getting better. Thank you, Ms. Russell.
Hi, just real quick. Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you for the invitation, and the proclamation was very well written. Thank you for sponsoring that, Vice Mayor, and just thank you to the city for being an active and dedicated member of the Florida League of Cities, and special shout out to Commissioner Drosky for being a board of directors member of the league. So thank you for your service there. But we do what we do so that you guys can continue serving your residents. So we appreciate you taking advantage of what we do here at the league. And thank you again for the proclamation. We really appreciate the recognition. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's your turn.
Mayor, before I hand it over to the attorney, there's actually two related items that we have moved up, item number 18 and item number 19. One is the Bezos Academy agreement. The second is the change order that would be required to meet the requirements of the facility under the Bezos Academy agreement. If I may, I'd like to have Ms. Priscilla Sejelnik, our Director of Environmental Services, give a brief presentation on what that change order would look like, and then followed up by a presentation by the Bezos Academy on what the program would look like. And I know that the city attorney also has some additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Anthony Soroka, City Attorney. For the record, I'm going to go ahead and read in the titles to item numbers 18 and 19 so they can be presented and discussed together. You will ultimately have to vote on the items separately. Item number 18 on tonight's agenda is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving a facility use agreement with Day One Academies doing business as Bezos Academy for Bezos Academy to use the Child Care Center at the Center for Active Aging Redevelopment site to operate a free tuition preschool for children within the city, authorizing execution of the agreement for a 10-year term with a 5-year renewal option, providing for execution conflicts and an effective date. The second item, item 19, is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving a change order in the amount of $1,887,985.27 to provide for a larger child care facility for the design build construction of the Center for Active Aging project for a total project cost of $13,609,437.02, providing for execution and an effective date. As to item number 18, I just wanted to bring it to your attention because we've been working very diligently and expeditiously with the Bezos Academy to try to put this agreement together while at the same time not stalling too much the Center for Active Aging project. So just some key terms in terms of the agreement. As mentioned in the title, there is a 10-year term. That 10-year term starts when the facility is delivered to the Bezos Academy, anticipated sometime in 2024. And Priscilla may speak to the timeline a little bit more later. There is a 5-year renewal option at the option of the parties. The agreement provides for exclusive use of the child care facility, as well as an adjacent playground to be built and 8 parking spots to the Bezos Academy. Bezos Academy is to provide the city with $300,000 towards the construction of the child care center. They're going to go ahead and take care of the playground equipment, and then they provide the tuition-free preschool education to children whose families could not otherwise afford it. The city's to build the facility, take care of the landscaping and irrigation, waste removal, fire inspection and monitoring, and structural repairs as needed to the building structure and the HVAC system, utility system, and common areas. And the parties are each responsible for their own acts and those of their respective employees and agents. And I know we have a couple presentations. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the agreement. Turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Soroka.
Good evening. Thank you all. So tonight, I'm here to present on the campus regarding the Center for Active Aging and the Child Care Facility. What you have before you is a rendering of the future Center for Active Aging, which is currently under construction. And the Child Care Facility is off to the left-hand side of this image. This is the original rendering that was proposed for the building. What I'm going to be discussing before you today is an expansion of this building to meet the programming needs for the Bezos Academy. Next slide, please. So our initial RFP consisted of building the Center for Active Aging and a care facility for the child care facility would be for 20 children. And the play area that had been denoted was a space intended for 20 children. As you know, as shown in this, this is an intergenerational campus with the adult daycare center at the Center for Active Aging and the child care center in that adjacent space shown in purple. Next slide, please. We began coordination with the Bezos Academy back in March, and speaking to them about the programmatic needs for their space, they indicated a desire to have 2 classrooms for a total of 40 children. So working with our architects who are here tonight, Manny Sinolowski is here if we have questions for the architect. He coordinated with the Bezos Academy as far as what their programming needs are and came up with this space plan for the future facility. Now this is an aggregated space of 2,500 square feet to the original planned building area. So we're talking about a building area of now 4,800 square feet, more than 4,800 square feet. And this is intended to house 40 children in the two classroom spaces. And consistent with the enlarged classroom space, we also have to enlarge the play area shown in that pink space. And so those areas are what have grown as a result of our coordination with the Bezos Academy. There are other implications to our site with regards to utilities, surface water license, having to retain additional stormwater because of the enlarged building, as well as some other smaller coordination items. So if we can go to the next slide, I can show you how this breaks down. So initially, in the original bid for the 20 children space building, the intent had been to build that building for $1 million. And so that area consisted of 2,600 square feet with a play area of approximately 1,600 square feet. That total cost shown in the ITB was $1 million. Now, when we coordinated with Bezos and we created a larger space, that additional square footage and additional play area with the ancillary needs of the facility increase that price by $1.8 million. So that total price of this new facility would be approximately $2.9 million, looking at that slide in front of you. Next slide, please. And I enumerated some of the costs associated with the change order. Predominantly, we're talking about the aggregated space, the additional building square footage. In addition to that, we have underground paving and additional costs as far as extension of times to contract and trailer rentals and those ancillary needs. So those are all indicated in this slide in front of you. Next slide, please. So when we looked at this as far as the return on investment, we are showing that after 10 years, we are able to show that return. As far as our operational costs, the city operates at approximately $230,000 a year for a 20 children classroom. Now, what we are proposing is double that size. So we would expect that our costs would be double if we were providing for 40 children in this classroom space. So again, our actual cost would be much more than this for the proposed facility, this 40 children space facility. The revenue that we receive from these services is also shown. So we showed what our total net cost for this facility is, and based on that total net, we're showing a return on investment after 10 years. In addition to that, as indicated by the city attorney, we are partnering with Bezos, and they have agreed to provide a partner contribution in the amount of $300,000. So we're actually showing that we have an operational savings over this 10-year time frame. And again, I do want to stress that if we were to provide this service for 40 children, these costs would be double for us. So because this is our cost based on what our proposed facility had been, which is based on an occupancy of 20 children, you know, these costs for what is being proposed would actually be double. And what we've heard from Bezos Academy is that they do estimate that their costs are in the amount of $500,000 annually to provide these services for those 40 children. So before you is the change order, and we are showing this operational savings. At the end of the day, we think it's a good program. We're providing tuition-free education for 40 children in our community, and definitely think that this is an excellent program to be providing to the community.
Thank you. So I have a quick question for you. I'm not sure this falls into your category, but currently what we're offering to the 20 children a year that we're able to handle, there is a cost to families. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
Do we have what that dollar amount is per family? Or per student?
Can we go back to that last slide, please? Thank you. Actually, it might be the one right before that. You see.
But it shows the
That's
revenue
the-
there.
Yeah, go to the revenue slide, please. It was that last slide, thank you. So the dollar amount per child that for us, Mayor, is the question?
Well, what I'm asking is, what does it cost those who are participating in the program? What we charge them currently?
Currently there isn't a rate because we haven't had one. We're bringing approximately 130,000 annually for 20 children. So that would be approximately, it's about,
Is it 35,704 divided by
So-
20?
about $54 a month that we charge each participant monthly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question, Vice Mayor?
Yes, I do. This facility was originally supposed to cost around $9 million, I believe. Now we're up to $14 million.
The Center for Active Aging initially.
Yeah. Now we're up to $14 million.
The anticipated construction cost for the Center for Active Aging was, I believe, 10.5, and then we had the 1 million for the child care
So
center.
11.5, now we're up to $14 million.
13 and change, yeah, 13 or so.
As we know, construction costs are going through the roof every day.
Yes, sir.
So what protection do we have as a city that in next year it's going to be $18 million?
Well, we are making significant progress on the construction currently. And what I can say is that, what we have before you is inclusive of all of the costs to date for the shell construction, everything that we anticipate as far as the costs associated with the child care facility. Now, we are working with a contractor with a guaranteed maximum contract price. While, we do have a clause in our contract for escalation in prices, we are trying to operate within that guaranteed maximum contract price, trying to be as creative as possible to keep the project within that threshold.
Where do we anticipate being a year from now or by 2024?
Well, I can have Justin speak to the schedule right now, but we would expect to have about a 6-month extension on this contract with the child care center changes. I believe we're looking at spring of next year to be complete on the Center for Active Aging. So this would extend it by 6 months, taking us into the summer.
So then students wouldn't be in there until 2020, I guess the latter part of 2024, September.
Summer timeframe, yes.
That's right.
Commissioner Preston?
City Manager, for the kids that may be participating in this program, it would be no cost to their families. Is that correct?
That's correct, Commissioner, and we have a separate presentation on the actual curriculum and programming for the Bezos Academy Child Care program, where I believe that most of those questions will be answered. I want to just before we bring that, well, I see, hello. Before we bring that up, I want to go over the slide just a little bit in more detail. When we look at what it's going to cost us to run this facility, I estimate that we will likely see the operating cost exceed over 3.6 million. And the way we come up with that, having had the child care center closed for a number of years now, due to the construction and COVID, I used a very conservative cost of living adjustment and added those costs over the course of the 10 years that this agreement would be in place. Looking at the revenues, as you can see, 19 was the last year where we ran a full program. We do run this child care facility at a deficit, and the number of children that we have had, although we could fit 20 or so in the previous center and this new center as it is today, without what is being proposed today, our numbers hovered around 15 students. So the net cost there is about just under $2 million to the city of Deerfield Beach to operate that child care center. Notice that with the change order at 1.8 in the partner contribution for the construction of 300,000, we actually do see an operational savings of just under 400,000 over the course of that 10-year agreement, which does not include that play area which will be constructed, which we don't know the cost of that right now, but play areas, depending on what are placed in there and what would be appropriate for this preschool, could range from anywhere from 25,000 to 100,000, depending on what actually goes in there. So I just wanted to go through those costs one more time and answer any questions on that in particular that the commission may have.
Is that operating cost based on 40 or 20 students?
That operating cost is based off of our 20 students.
Okay.
So if we were to operate a 40-student preschool, our net cost would probably be around $4 million.
Okay. Yes. Any other questions before we move on? The only thing that I will say is that we need to look at it this way now. Some might say that over 10 years, 389,000 is not, it's certainly not a small number, but you would think it would be more. The truth of the matter is, there's a couple of things that at 389,000 on top of the savings that we get there, it's the fact that we're able to double the amount of students that are going to get this service. That's huge. And the other thing is the cost that the families would normally be paying. This is free tuition, correct?
That is correct, man.
So for the 40, what we're getting back and what we're able to give to the community, especially those in the most dire need of this. And we all know that early education is a key to keeping people on the straight and narrow later on in life. And this is a tremendous opportunity for the city of Deerfield Beach, I believe. And the numbers don't really show what the true benefit is to the city. And I think the fact that we're able to service double the amount of kids that we can do now, and we're able to do it free of charge to this family in the most dire need, and get savings on it long term. The additional increase on the change order to me is a very small amount compared to what we get back. Vice Mayor Hudak.
Thank you. The benefit to the community goes without question. I just want to focus on this specific issue with regards to the cost. And I'm going to quote Commissioner Drosky from a couple of meetings ago, where he said we need to go big and go bold. This is big and bold. It has, I think the benefit question, the benefit to the community is no brainer. Yes, this is going to cost a little bit more money, but in the long run, there is a cost savings. And whether we had 5 children in that school or 25 children in that school, the cost is not going to change all that much because you still have to hire employees, train employees, and keep those kids safe, whether you have 5 kids there or 15 kids there. The fact that by providing this facility, we're going to get a professional organization in there that is going to provide a Montessori school is tremendously beneficial to the children of Deerfield Beach. So focusing on just this item here, the costs overrides are the one thing I just want to make sure. And I know our city manager and I know Ms. Gilman, that they would keep an eye on those costs and cost overrides and do everything that we can to make sure that we keep them as low as we possibly can. Thank you.
Commissioner Preston.
Keep in mind also that that we were operating at a deficit, and there's a lot of considerations here. But Mayor, I agree with you that the cost is it's a nominal cost to consider the benefits. You used a word, Vice Mayor, and that word was Montessori. I'm not sure that everybody here understands what the Montessori model is. It's important that you know that because you hear that term, and it just sort of happens that I've been involved with a few Montessori schools. The Montessori model, if you will, is that they don't teach on the normal formal school setting. Their setting is different in that they are looking at the interest of a child and they look to build on that so that it's a unique way of teaching so that they find the successes basically in every kid where that kid may normally be lost in a traditional setting. And is okay?
Spot on.
Okay, thank you. You know, so it's a good alternative, and the Montessori models around have been very successful. A lot of kids have done very well because of that. So I just wanted people to understand what you use the word Montessori, what does it really mean? You know, relative to education, and that's it. Their way of teaching is completely different, and yet very successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. So you can introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you, Manager and City Attorney and City Clerk. Appreciate the opportunity to represent the Bezos Academy today. My name is Sheila Shad, and I'm the Regional Partnership Development Leader here in Florida. I'm based in Miami. One of the things I wanted to share with you as we start, there's a video to just briefly introduce what our concept is in a small snapshot. But I also wanted to start off with the story of why. So Jeff Bezos himself, he was born to a teenage mom, and she wasn't able to provide quality and access to early education for Jeff. However, there was a Montessori school that was willing to subsidize his tuition, which allowed him access. And we all know how the story goes for Jeff. And now he's looking back and saying he wants to give the same opportunity to 3 to 5-year-olds across the country. So currently we have 5 schools operating in the state of Washington. 4 are coming to the state of Florida. 1 really close by at FAU, will be opening up in 2023.
Where's that?
Florida Atlantic University. And then 3 in the Orlando Kissimmee area. And so this would be the first in Broward County. So we're really excited about that. I grew up in Miami, so I grew up in South Florida, so I'm really excited that we could bring these types of resources to our community. So with that, we'll open up and if you could please, there's a video.
Hi, I'm sorry. The video is not going to work because the link isn't in the actual video or in the actual PowerPoint itself. It's taking me to a different website that I cannot show.
Oh, okay, no problem. We could follow up with a link for everyone.
Excellent, thank you.
Sorry about that. So basically our purpose, next slide, is all children deserve a chance to quality education, and that's what we believe at the Basis Academy. Our model is to provide tuition-free Montessori inspired. So as Commissioner Preston mentioned, the Montessori is very student focused. So our main principle is child first, and so that's really what Montessori is. When you're in the classroom, it's amazing to see the child decide what they're going to be studying for the day. And then the teacher is there to facilitate, basically. And as they're learning their numbers, they're learning them contextually. They're learning it in very varied ways, not just memory, like we're traditionally taught. And so that's what the beauty of Montessori does. And in addition to that, not only are we Montessori, but we're Montessori inspired because we recognize that each community is different, and we want to be able to adjust our curriculum to match the community as well. So for example, there was an Indian, a Native American reservation that we opened up a school nearby in Washington. And the elders came to us and asked, would it be possible to introduce the children to their heritage and that history and information? So we were able to modify and give that opportunity there. So that's what we mean by Montessori. It's not rigid. It really opens up the opportunity for the community to infuse what the students are learning. Now, besides the curriculum, we also provide food for the children, full meals, 3 meals a day, and a take-home dinner snack. And so that really helps those families that unfortunately they may not have access. And so we want to make sure that our children are taken care of, not only by their their physical as far as their brain, but also their physicality as well. And so one of the things that we look at is we when we're deciding on how the lottery is operated for our school, we really focus on the federal poverty line. One of the key things that we do target families that are below the 250%, and those families that otherwise would not have access. We want them to have a fair shot as well, so they get access on the lottery. But in addition to that, we also provide space for those families that are over 250 but under 400% of the federal poverty line, because as we all know, some families end up losing their benefits based on making a little bit more, but maybe not enough to cover what they lost under the government services. So we're very mindful of that. So we're very intentional in our lottery process. So 50% of those seats are opened up for 250% of the federal poverty line, and then the other 50% is opened up to 400%. Now, the caveat to that, we also do give first preference to children who are homeless, and then also children who are in the foster care system. So they automatically get. And those that are left, that's the balance of the class. So as I mentioned, the Montessori Inspired takes into effect social emotional development, language, math, practical life skills, art, music, outdoors. We mentioned earlier about the outdoor space. You'll also know that our outdoor spaces are not like typical outdoor spaces. They're not with slides or things like that. It's really much nature inspired.
So children, again, are feeling the sand, they're climbing rocks. And so it's very nature oriented as far as the outdoors. So you'll see a lot of gardens and things like that. And that's what really excited us about the project itself, because you're already planning to have a garden in the space. We've already started talking about intergenerational opportunities for the senior citizens who are attending the active aging site could come and maybe read books to the children, things like that. And so those are the opportunities that makes this project extra special to us, because it's not just school, it's really a community coming together to bring its best for everyone. So that's where we are there. Next slide, please. And I'll talk a little bit about our model. Thanks. So like I mentioned, full day year round. So again, year round means that we are not closed from May through September like typical schools. We are open year round. And one of the key reasons for that is that we want parents to have an opportunity to go back to school, back to work, be able to do what they need to do for themselves and not be limited, because some parents right now have to make the choice. Do they stay home? Do they go to work? Now we want to be able to take that burden off of them. So that's another reason why we focus on full day year round. But we also recognize, there is going to be vacations, there is going to be holidays and things like that. So we're not, 365 days, but you get the point. Like it's mostly full day year round. Highly qualified teachers. That's a very important piece to talk about. We know that Montessori certified teachers is not something that's in abundance right now. So we have taken it on ourselves to train it as well and use Montessori certification. So, and in addition to that, part of our focus is when we're hiring from the community as well. So these parents that I mentioned earlier who may want to go back to work, maybe they decide they want to be in the classroom, and we will give them that path. We will take them on and put them on a succession plan where one day they too can maybe start off as an assistant teacher and end up as a head of school themselves. That's a commitment that we've had. So think of it as an academy within the academy. And then also family and community partnerships. Again, I mentioned about the intergenerational aspirations that we have. We already are really excited about that piece. And then again, first and foremost, free. Like parents don't have to pay a dime for our services. In addition to the curriculum that we'll be providing, coordination of support services is also part of our program, because we also recognize that a lot of times children are coming with additional emotional needs, or they need access to services we're not experts in, but we can help coordinate those programs with the families. So we've made that commitment, and actually that's now a staff member on our staff for each school to do that. So a support specialist will be dedicated to the school. So that's how our program works. I know I went probably over time, but I just want to open it up for questions, or reactions.
Thank you. Commissioner Preston?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, yes, I do have a question. If I heard you correctly, there could be potential opportunity for the community in terms of training people, so there could be some job opportunities.
Yes.
I'm additionally curious that if you guys have any studies, being that you're using this model, to complement or to just say that you've noticed that with this model, there is a difference between sensory and motor skill adaptations.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we only have 5 schools in practice right now, but we do have an impact analysis on an impact researcher on staff who's collecting that data as we speak. And we're already starting to see like the growth of the children through the program. It's tremendous. But again, to your point, we've got to document it to make sure that we're.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'm going to open it up to the public, and then we might have more questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who care to comment on this item? For these items, you should say. Come on up, just name, address, for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Schnetsky. Live at 34 Keswick B. Deerfield Beach, 33442. I want to say that I think that's fantastic. I mean, what grabbed me in the presentation was the intergenerational campus. I think that's a great way to bridge the older community who's on the last stage of their life and the young community that's opening up the first stage of their life. I think it's very, very important. And I think it would show a really good blueprint with other programs where the young interacts with the elderly. I think there's a tremendous amount of potential there, and this is a great litmus test. The other thing that excites me is I like the fact that the city, government, and private are cooperating together. The Bezos Corporation will be doing some, budget on the different things, the facility, the landscaping, and the city is also contributing. I think that's also very, very important to have the city and private working together on a project. And I think that's a great blueprint for the future. So I'm in tremendous support. I'm very excited.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Quinn Clark Reed, I see you online. Representative, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way. My question is about the square footage per child as per state mandates for childcare centers. Are we following that, or does this Bezos Academy fall outside of the realm of that?
Yes, I can answer that. We actually go exceed the state mandate because it's Montessori. A lot of everything happens within the classroom. So typically you're looking at 750 square feet. We're actually offering 1,000 square feet total per classroom.
If I could elaborate, the square footage that is being proposed at a state requirement is 52 children. And I believe Bezos Academy is proposing 40.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public here to comment on this item?
Janice Fulmer, taking 1090 Southwest Park Terrace. My only question was, I was looking up Bezos Academy, and at first I saw where the lottery, it is a lottery type program, but you did explain that it will be open to lower income and middle income as well. But with the homelessness people that you will be giving the opportunities to, what percentage of that is still going to be available to the ones that are at that medium income or low income to be able to attend? Because if it's overwhelmingly taken by the homeless people or the foster, it says foster care children as well, or foster children siblings, then that leaves little or no room for, much room for the others that are under, the minimal income basis. So I just kind of want to look at that issue because there are some that are in need that won't be able to financially afford it. And if it's taken up by all the homeless children, then, and the foster kids, then, there's the foster programs that are out there, but sounds awesome.
Thank you, Ms. Tignan. Is there anyone else from the public who care to comment? Not seeing any, we're going to close it to the public. If you'd like to address that. Yes, ma'am.
Sadly, we haven't considered that there would be an outnumbering of homeless and foster to lower income, but we do remain committed to providing that those first seats to them, because unfortunately they don't have a home. They don't have a stable home. So I apologize that we haven't, we're very limited on the number of seats, but that is the first priority. They do get first priority.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I would imagine that, when you're looking at your priorities, you need to go with someone who has a home or doesn't have a home. And I think that's where your priorities kind of fall as far as who would be able to qualify for this. Well, I know this is going to be open to beyond Deerfield Beach. I know that we are going to be a big part part of the marketing aspect of this, so we have the opportunity to make sure that our residents are first and foremost with that, from what I understand. So, Mr. City Attorney, we have to do these in order, is that correct? 18 and
That's
19?
correct. We need separate votes for each. So the first item would be number 18, which is the facility use agreement, followed by number 19, which would be the change order for the design build construction contract.
Okay. Commissioner Drosky, you have a question?
I do. You didn't think I was gonna go without saying anything, did you?
I was doubtful.
I have some questions first, probably best directed toward Ms. Sigelnik. So if you could come on down. What we didn't discuss, or what no one has mentioned so far, which I think is extremely important, is security. Can you discuss the security for this facility to ensure that we're maximizing the protection for the students and the teachers that are there?
Yes, we will have a secured campus with CCTV cameras that are tied into DSO. That'll be throughout our entire campus, securing the facility.
And also in my research, there's also a concept subTED, crime prevention through environmental design. Is that incorporated in this facility?
Yeah, our architect can probably speak more to that. I can have Manny come up briefly and
Because I think this is important.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to the members of the commission. My name is Manny Sinalowski. I'm the architect of record for this amazing project. As it relates to the facility itself, as you heard already from Priscilla, there is a significant amount of technology, not only outside of the building to protect the outside, if you will, but also a significant amount of technology inside the building. The building itself is quite hardened. It obviously is going to satisfy the requirements of the Florida Building Code as it relates to its strength and its capacity to not only endure hurricane loads, but for that matter, a significant amount of other loads that may affect a building from the outside. We have designed the campus in its totality using passive systems, which is really SEPTED. As a matter of fact, the Sheriff's Office has looked at our site plan and has made sure that when it comes to proper lighting, when it comes to eliminating obscurity by landscaping, conditions that in effect are uncomfortable or unsafe or insecure, that the whole campus in effect is very well protected. Beyond that, the model itself of the Bezos prototype, if you will, creates various levels of security so that the child, once inside the building, is very well protected from anybody that may step into the building by a series of doors and a series of, if you will, holding areas. The play area is fully enclosed. You don't leave the building to cross any other space. You go directly to the play area and vice versa from the play area back into the building. So any of the elements that you can imagine, whether they're passive or for that matter mechanical, and whether it's technology, whether it's lighting, whether it's security, all of that has been integrated not only into the building, but into the campus in its totality.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
Do you have anything to add? Priscilla, you're looking at me.
If I can just, if I may add, please, Commissioner, the security system that has been mentioned is the city standard security system. Just for the record, the Bezos Academy does have the right to install their own security system if they feel that they want something a little bit more robust. But I can, as you probably heard this evening, I'm pretty confident in the system that's being installed presently.
Okay, thank you. I was really prepared for a debate that didn't materialize tonight, so I'm going to jump in to Vice Mayor Hudak, because you started talking about, the cost. And I think you were correct to question the cost, because we had the Tigner Center before, and unlike that project, I did not think there was a return on investment for the senior center. And that's why I was a no vote for that expansion. But I think this expansion is fundamentally different and is worthy of a yes vote. The operational savings is close to $400,000 for this particular project. And as the mayor pointed out, there's an intrinsic value to our children that you cannot put a cost. The type of instruction that they'll be receiving, the free education, the opportunity to free the parents up to go to work or to go to school. You can't put a cost on those intangibles. And so that is something that will far exceed whatever this 1.9 million that we're being asked to do. The 1.9 is basically a wash plus the addition with the playground and the other costs. So to me, that part is very easily explainable for the return on investment. Vice Mayor, you also said go big and go bold. That's kind of my mantra up here. So, and I agree. And I think this is an opportunity that we'd be very foolish not to pass on. And one of the other benefits, when you look at the social emotional learning program, that is the concept of Montessori programming, you also see that children routinely have higher test scores and they reduce anxiety. And while that may sound cliche, I think that is also extremely important, because what we're trying to do in our schools is to prevent bullying or to identify those children who could be or are problematic. We need to look no further than across the borders to Parkland to see what happens when you don't identify those children. And I'm not saying at the preschool level you're going to identify somebody at that level, but it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. And everybody likes to talk about it, but we're actually doing something about it. And so I applaud the city for engaging the Bezos Academy and bringing them to our city. I think it's a great addition. It's going to be a great partnership going forward. So I will be a yes vote. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
So we need to take item number 18 first, and then item number 19 first. Vice Mayor.
Motion to approve item 18.
Second. Motion from the Vice Mayor, second by Commissioner Preston. Be a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion to approve item 19.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Hudak, second by Commissioner Preston. Be a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Welcome to City Deerfield Beach.
Look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, the next item is item number 3. The public hearing, presentation regarding the consideration of approval for a $20,000 increase to the low and moderate income maximum award through the purchase and assistance rehabilitation programs.
And Mayor, I'll go ahead and take this one. I don't think really, I'm happy to give the presentation and have Jonathan Salas come up to give that, but this is rather simple. We currently have our housing programs with a high dollar threshold of $50,000 for the rehabilitation and the purchase assistance programs. Those thresholds have been in place for about a decade. We have seen the housing market obviously increase since that time, as well as the cost of repairs. The current threshold has become a little difficult to assist these homeowners to really get their bang for their buck in terms of the purchase assistance and or the repair of their homes. So this item here is asking for consideration to approval of a $20,000 increase to the low and moderate income maximum awards through the purchase and assistance rehabilitation programs. There is an accompanying item that is on the agenda as well. I believe it is item 15, which we'll get to obviously later on in the evening. 14, excuse me. And that is related to the procurement code, which will allow for the implementation of this, should the commission approve this item, to allow for the use of our rehabilitation estimators and our current our construction contract process for the administrative awards of this $50,000 amount. I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, we do have a presentation, so that should the city commission desire.
Thank you. I, for one, don't need the presentation. I can tell you that I think it makes common sense for us to increase that threshold. Zillow put out a report today. It said in the zip code for 33441, which is the majority of Deerfield Beach on the eastern and central portion of the city, the typical home value a year ago was $302,057. It's now $391,646 with 48 homes being recently sold. The market is extremely hot and is getting out of reach for, well, people talk about low income housing. Let's just call it housing. There is no low income housing. When I first moved to Deerfield, I paid $150,000 for my home. People thought it was nuts at the time that we bought it because they thought we paid too much for it. And here we are, years later, and for new families starting out or people that are coming out of school, ability to own a home at a $391,000 price range is astronomical. So I think this makes a lot of sense. Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on this item? Not seeing any. Let me just check up on it. Not seeing any. I'm going to close it to the public commission.
Mayor, that was a presentation item. There will be a resolution coming before you at the next meeting. We will actually approve the change.
Okay.
So we're ready to move on. Okay, great.
Commissioner Preston, you have a final?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Well, there's no motion. It's a little confusing for us up here. Okay.
We're now at public comment. Persons addressing the commission shall state his or her name and address, may speak for 3 minutes unless extended for 1 additional minute by the mayor. This is the time for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If you have public comment on an item that is on the agenda, the time to do that is after I read the title into the record, and the public comment period for that item is open. No comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibility shall be permitted.
Quinn Clark Reed, representative, you have your hand up?
Yes, Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield. I'd just like to know from the city manager or Ms. Gilliard, in preparation of the agenda, if when it's where it says attachments, is it possible to put the page numbers for the information, the backup there, so that you don't have to go all the way through a lot of pages to find out where the backup is for the item? If you can just, where it says attachments, the page number of those attachments in the agenda, I think that I know it would be helpful for me. Also, there are 2 signs that I've noticed are down on the ground, and I don't know, what the reason is. They've been down for quite some time. It's one at Southwest 15th Street that is a directional for Dixie Highway. And there's one on Southwest 4th, right at the bus stop at Dixie Highway, which is a directional for the railroad crossing. So I don't know, why they're down, or are they down for a reason? But they are important signs, in the locations.
We will definitely look into it. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who care to speak? Come on up. Just name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Chris Marino, 1525 Southeast 14th Court. I stand before my fellow citizens to express my deep concern and disappointment in 2 of our city commissioners during their open comment segment of our last city commission meeting. Commissioner Parnas went on a long rant, spewing and lecturing to the citizens of Deerfield Beach on his personal partisan left-wing views on gun control Immediately thereafter, Commissioner Preston supported and echoed similar sentiments. As a resident, I am here to point out not only do I totally disagree with their ideology as well as their talking points, I am more upset that our commissioners used this time to preach about partisan issues when their positions as commissioners are supposed to be nonpartisan. Now, they tried to cover that up in what they said by making comments, something like, these are American issues and not partisan issues, which is a smokescreen in my opinion. I want to make it perfectly clear that I expect my city commission to focus on talking about issues specific to Deerfield Beach and keep their left-wing views out of city business. And moreover, I don't want to be lectured with your political opinions. Us citizens can think for ourselves, and we don't need you telling us how to think. I would be remiss without saying, particularly in the wake of Independence Day, that had our patriots in 1776 laid down their guns at the hands of tyrants that wanted to control us, we may not be having this commission meeting today. I may point out that with the aggression from the left-wing's communist allies in China and their allies by default in Russia are triggering the fall of free nations in Ukraine by Russia and soon to be by Taiwan and China. This is left-wing weakness in action and exactly where these left-wing talking points are leading us. So no, Commissioner Parnas and Preston, we will not surrender our guns or our inalienable rights as American citizens. The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Bill of Rights amendments add to the Constitution specific guarantees of personal freedoms and rights, clear limitations on government's power in judicial and other proceedings, and explicit declarations that all powers not specifically granted to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the states or the people. Personal rights held by an individual, which are not bestowed by law, custom, or belief, and which cannot be taken or given away or transferred to any other person, as referred to as inalienable rights. The U.S. Constitution recognized that certain universal rights cannot be taken away by legislation, as they are beyond the control of a government, being naturally given to every individual at birth, and that these rights are retained throughout life. I hope we can all now resume our focus on Deerfield, the city of Deerfield Beach, and the issues that need attention to make Deerfield Beach a great place for its current residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public here to speak? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Hi, good evening. My name is Laura Ortiz, and I live at 3500 Southwest Natura Boulevard in Deerfield Beach. I would like to respond also to what happened at the end of the meeting, but from a different perspective. I wanted to read some stats on mass shootings, but from a different perspective. 97.8% of mass shootings are linked to this. While many have bought into the simplistic idea that availability of firearms is the cause of mass shootings, a number of experts have pointed out a more uncomfortable truth, which is that mass shootings are far more likely the result of how we've been mistreating mental illness, depression, and behavioral problems. Gun control legislation has shown that law-abiding Americans who own guns are not the problem. Because the more gun control laws that have been passed, the more mass shootings have occurred. 97.8% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. As the perpetrators know, legally armed citizens won't be there to stop them. Depression, per se, rarely results in violence. Only after antidepressants became commonplace did mass shootings really take off. And many mass shooters have been shown to be on antidepressants. Antidepressants, especially selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, better known as SSRIs, are well known for their ability to cause suicidal and homicidal ideation and violence. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a mass murder occurs when at least 4 people are murdered, not including the shooter, during a single incident. Seemingly, every time a mass shooting occurs, the anti-gun media and politicians have a knee-jerk response. They blame the tragedy solely on the tool used, namely firearms, and focus all of their proposed solutions on more laws, ignoring that the murderer already broke numerous laws when they committed their atrocity. Facts matter when addressing such an emotionally charged topic, and more gun control legislation has shown that law-abiding Americans who own guns are not the problem. Consider the following. The more gun control laws that are passed, the more mass murders have occurred. Whether or not this is a correlation or causation is debatable. What is not debatable is that this sick,
Would you like one more minute?
may I? This sick phenomenon of mass murderers targeted gun-free zones where they know civilian carry isn't available to law-abiding Americans is happening. According to the Crime Prevention Research Center, 97.8% of public shootings occur in gun-free zones. And gun-free zones are the epitome of the core philosophical tenet of gun control, that laws are all the defense one needs against violence. This debate leads them away from the elephant in the room and one of the real issues behind mass shootings, mental health and prescription drugs. Ignoring what's going on in the heads of these psychopaths not only allows mass shootings to continue, it leads to misguided gun control laws that violate the Second Amendment and negate the rights of law-abiding citizens. And the elephant in the room is the
Thank you, ma'am.
antidepressants.
Appreciate it.
I will end with that.
Thank
So look into that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who cares to speak?
Please.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Lucia Del Gino, 707 North Shore Drive, Deerfield Beach.
I'm sorry, ma'am, what's your last name?
Del Gino.
Thank you.
Sure. Excuse me, I have a little hoarse voice.
It's okay.
I echo what my colleagues here have said. I really appreciate their contribution to what we need to know of, and that's part of my belief also. I was born in Brazil. And what changed so much the last few years was the fact that this president that we have now down there, and I have dual citizenship, has brought up the need for citizens to also buy guns and protect themselves. As you know, we have a very high crime rate in Brazil. And since we have this new president and this new law, not just a law, but an incentive to have guns for your protection, the crime percentage have gone down tremendously. So we applaud the president, and I applaud also the Constitution of the United States. I was surprised to hear the two commissioners bring that up last time, mostly because this is not the area to do so. It's your private opinion, does not belong into our property for the city business only. And I'm really happy that the superintendent was here today, bringing up the fact that she's gonna support the new referendum. And I think if you wanna help stop the violence in school, vote yes on a referendum. This way we have more protection.
That's okay.
I'm very nervous.
Don't worry about it.
More hardened protection in every campus, better school, better pay for the teachers, and also mental health support for students, teachers, and the other support staff of the school. And that's my big, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public care to speak? Yes, sir, come on. Former commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, fellow commissioners, thank you for your service. I want to talk about
Your name and address
Oh,
for the
yeah.
record. We may know you, but others might not.
Joe Miller, 248 Southeast 18th Avenue, Deerfield Beach. I want to talk about 4th of July celebration in the city. I want to thank you all for authorizing the firework display. I also want to commend the BSO sheriffs. You know, there was an incident earlier today at a parade, but I felt very secure at our beach, even with the overflow population. And the fire department, I felt they were right there, and praise God for our beach patrol who kept the bathers safe all day. I thought it was an excellent display, but I just have one thing that maybe I'm the only one in this room experienced during that time, and I want you even to consider an ordinance. I observed the fireworks from the south side of the main beach parking lot, right directly from where I live, on the beach, just right on the beach. But there was somebody on the beach with a DJ with loudspeakers, so loud that I couldn't even hear the music from our stage. A little bit south of me, a little bit towards the beach. And frankly, I didn't recognize any of the music. I have no idea the origin of the people that were playing the music, but it actually distracted me from the patriotic event that we were there to observe and participate in. I know there's laws out now, I think a current law that even cars should not be blasting the radio out at a certain decibel level, and that can get a ticket or something to that effect. But I want you to consider, and I know I'm probably the only one in the room that experiences this, but I was totally distracted by the volume and the unpatriotic music going on our beach while we were having a spectacular display and music coming from the stage, which kind of correlated with the display. So for you to think of, but if you experience it, I'm sure you would want to have some kind of ordinance to prevent it in the future. And I'm just exhorting you to maybe think that I don't think anybody would object to, but to set up a display that was so loud it overdid the music that I could hear from the stage, I think was not a worthy thing. And again, thank you for service. I also believe in the Second Amendment very strongly. And God bless you all. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the public who care to speak? Not seeing any, other than close it to the public. I'm sure that's something the city manager will look into as far as regarding the competing musicians on the beach when we're having an event compared to what's happening on the beach. I will say this, I don't think anybody that sits up here gives up their right to share their ability to speak their free will and free mind on anything, just like we don't restrict anybody who comes to the podium that would like to make comments. So points are well taken, but thank you. Commissioner Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, these situations, debates that we get into sometimes can be very challenging. But I don't like my position and my point of view misrepresented. One, I believe in the Second Amendment as well. What I said then before, and I'm still, my feeling is still the same, is that assault weapons does not belong in the hands of normal, regular citizens. And that's my point of view, and it has not changed. And just for the record, the last couple, there was a statement made that law-abiding citizens is not a problem. The shooting in New York was by a law-abiding citizen. The gun was purchased with, there was no problem. The shooting in Uvalde, that shooting that took place with long guns, that person who purchased the gun did it legally. So those people were law-abiding citizens. So what do you do then? And I don't back away from that. Those are weapons of war. Excuse me. Those are weapons of war. They do not belong in the hands of regular, normal people. And I'm not going to change that opinion. So you can attack me all you want, doesn't matter. This is the United States of America that gives me the right to disagree with you. And I do.
Thank you. Next item.
Okay, we are now at the consent portion of tonight's agenda. Item number 5, as a reminder, was tabled. So items 4 and 6 through 13 are currently on consent.
Okay. Are there any polls on these items? Items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12-13. Commissioner Drosky?
I don't know that we need to pull it, but 7, 8, 9, and 10 involve our favorite subject, Southwest 10th Street. So I think they at least deserve a mention of what we're doing and not being glossed over.
Okay, but before we do that as a grouping, then can we get clarity from the city manager on those items without pulling them before we get to it? Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on item 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13? Yet, which item would you like to speak on? Sir? Item 10?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, excuse me, 5 has already been pulled. So item number 10, we'll make sure we'll pull that out for discussion. So you have a chance to speak. Anyone else? Anyone else? No? Okay, can we get a quick recap?
Good evening, Priscilla Segal, Director for Environmental Services. Tonight we do have representatives here from FDOT if there's any questions regarding these items. However, these are items that pertain to relocation of city facilities or water and sewer lines that fall within the FDOT right-of-way. FDOT is acquiring additional right-of-way to provide for a utility corridor that will house our water and sewer so that we will have the ability to maintain our facilities in the future. 7 is with regards to the utility work by highway contractor agreement at FDOT expense. So again, all of the expenses at the state level, the city encumbers no cost for the relocation of the utilities. Item number 8 is associated with the second phase of this project. So there's two separate project ID numbers for the Southwest 10th Street. The first is the east portion of the project, which consists of I-95 and Southwest 10th Street. And the second portion, the item 8, is what we call the west portion of Southwest 10th Street, which is where it interconnects to the Sawgrass Expressway. Item 9 is a right-of-way acquisition memorandum, and this enables FDOT to perform work within city rights-of-way. The improvements there consist of some improvements to Military Trail as well as Natura Boulevard. All of these are city jurisdictional local roads. And then the HMMOA, which is item 10, reverts the maintenance of our local streets back to the city. So we'll have perpetual maintenance of the improvements that are made by the FDOT to our local roads. So that, and it just is the 4 agreements before you. If there's any questions, we also have FDOT here available.
Thank you, Commissioner Drosky. Before we go ahead.
It's not really a question. Priscilla, just confirm with me, please, on number 10, that the maintenance is not for the corridor itself. That's a bigger topic that we're going to be discussing later, correct? This is just for, it's in the backup, just those particular areas that are in the backup we're discussing, correct?
Yes, there's an exhibit there that indicates the scope. The scope consists of numerous different items. There's drainage improvements on our local streets. There's curb and gutter improvements. There's some sidewalk construction on our local roads. So these would be to the city's benefit, things that we've asked for, FDOT to do as a part of the improvements that they're making.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's right to be clear that I think this is not the hill to die on these particular ones. So thank you.
Not tonight.
Then we can do this as a group. We pulled item number 10. So we'd be looking for 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, and 13. If someone wants to make a motion to approve. I'm sorry? We pulled 10. That sounds good. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Hudak, second by Commissioner Preston. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Hill.
Yes. Item number 10.
We are now on item number 10, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving a highway maintenance memorandum of agreement with Florida Department of Transportation for the maintenance of improvements associated with the Southwest 10th Street Connector Project, authorizing execution of the agreement, providing for implementation and an effective date.
We're going to open this up to the public. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Trinetsky. I live at 34 Keswick B, Deerfield Beach 33442. I live in Century Village, been living there for 21 years. I'm against this approval of the resolution, even though I understand what you're saying, that it's side streets, the maintenance, things like that. I mean, I feel that the Southwest Street project is like a tsunami or rogue wave. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's foreseeable, but I'm afraid of the consequences. I was at the April 3rd District 3 town hall meeting. It was in Century Village. It was sponsored by our City Commissioner Parnes, and our County Commissioner Mark Bogan was there as well. And what bothered me was there is no final decision on the design. Basically, from what I saw, FDOT said they have no idea what it's really going to look like. There's too many questions. There's too many variables. They have no idea what this $890 million project that will save 5 minutes of time between the Turnpike and I-95. They're not sure really what it's really going to look like, how it's going to really fall into place. And that's scary. Commissioner Drotsky has a lot of questions, like I said, on the sidebars of the project. There are too many variables. There are too many questions. And I disagree that we should approve even this resolution because we don't know what it's going to get. And the bottom line is this: it's going to affect a lot of people in that area. It's going to affect Century Village. It's going to affect Independence Bay. It's going to affect waterways, and it's going to affect commercial businesses in that area between Southwest 10th Street and I-95. It's too big. There are too many variables. There are too many questions, and the state is too iffy on this. So my opinion is I don't think we should approve this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public here to speak? Sitting online. We close it to the public. Commission comments. Obviously, I didn't attend that meeting, but I wish I had, because I'd be curious. I've never heard FDOT not say that they didn't know what this is going to look like. I think the bigger problem is I think we felt like we've known exactly what they've known exactly what it's going to look like from the very beginning, and that's part of our problem. But this is a needed item. It does not fall into the category, I feel, of changing the direction of this project or probably achieving the goal that one might think it would by not approving this. It creates more issues than it does solutions by not approving this. And this is from somebody who rarely likes to give in to FDOT's way. So I fully support this.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve.
I guess I'll second.
We have a motion from the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Preston. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
and Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Here we are now on item number 14. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 38, Finance and Taxation of the City Code of Ordinances, Article 4, Acquisition of Goods and Services and Disposal of City Property, Section 38-133, Federal and State Projects, Federal Grants, to increase the subsidy approval thresholds for the Residential Rehabilitation Program, providing for conflict severability codification and an effective date. This is first reading.
Commissioner Preston, anybody? It's okay. City Manager, comments on this?
Yeah, just again, Mayor and City Commission, this is the accompanying item to the increase the affordable housing rehabilitation and purchase assistance program item, which we presented earlier. This will be the first reading, so upon second reading, we get the resolution for that item and second reading of this item.
Yeah. Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Not seeing, we go to close public commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from the vice mayor, thank you, and a seconded by Commissioner Preston. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Yes.
Item number 15 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, accepting and adopting the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021, providing for implementation and effective date.
Good evening, Stephanie Tinsley, CFO, City of Deerfield Beach. Pleased to present to you the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2021. The next slide, please. So I'll briefly go over the compliance requirements and that we have met them, and the high-level financial highlights. Summary of the governmental activities, net position, and general fund balance. And then the financial results of some of our main funds, which of course the general fund, the solid waste fund, the utilities fund, and the stormwater fund. And then wrap it up with the audit finding and the comments, and then the presentation from our auditors of Markham, Mr. Lopez, to come up and do their presentation to the commission. So the next slide, please. So just as briefly is the compliance requirements. We met them all. The Florida statute 218.32 must submit within 9 months of the fiscal year end, and we accomplished that. We also did the federal audit, clearinghouse, the single audit, the ORBs, the CFRs. We also did all of the required continuing disclosure agreements for our bonds and our debt. And then we did our submission for the GFOA financial reporting award. Next slide, please. So just to quickly go over the financial highlights. Sometimes when you look at the numbers at a high level, you kind of miss some of the, I feel some of the important accomplishments that are done within the numbers. If we go down like one level. So the total assets for the government wide increased by 12.4 million. That primarily is due to the ARPA funds that we received, as well as sort of due to from other funds. This makes up that 12.4. When we go and look at their liabilities, we see a decrease of 1.7 million. Some of that is offset by we also have to recognize the ARPA funds as a liability as unearned revenue because we did not expend the funds yet. And then of course due to other funds. And so that kind of nets out some of the large reductions that we actually did accomplish in the year. So the reduction in debt principal, 8 million across both our governmental and our business type activities. And some reduction in our total OPEB liability and reduction in our net pension liability. We continue to make all the required actuarial calculated contributions annually. And then under the combined governmental fund balance, it increased by 8.3 million, primarily due to the general fund results, and we'll go over that later. And some of the other increases or decreases include CRA increase of 1.6, general construction fund, the spend down of the bond proceeds of approximately 1 million. And then the non-major funds, 1.7, primarily the building fund, which related to that general fund
transferred back to, that was in the building permit fund, was transferred back to the general fund. Next slide, please. So summary of governmental activities net position, we continue to improve year over year. And again, that's the result of the overall pension and OPEB results, as well as pay down of debt and other cost containment measures that was taken through in FY 2021. So remember, the budget was created during the height of COVID for FY 2021. And so we took a very restrictive tightening of the belt for FY 2021. As the economy improved, we continue with those cost containment measures. And next slide, please. So summary of the general fund balance. As we see towards the bottom of the total fund balances from 2020 to 2021, each year for us increased a little bit. And we had the biggest increase from 2020 to 2021 of 8.5 million. Again, direct result of the general fund for this year. And that result has been shown in the unassigned fund balance of the increase of 21.7 million to 35 million. That was 8.5. Plus, we also did a major cleanup of the, we did a review of the subsequent year's budget, that line there. In 2020, it was 5.74, and generally it was about 5 million for the past several years. And what we did was the team did a detailed analysis of all of the outstanding encumbrances going back for several years and liquidated those that no longer were needed. And so then resulted in only a encumbrance of about $1 million that needed to go forward in FY 2022. So that result ended up also increasing unassigned fund balance. And so that's where you see that increase of about 13 million from FY 20 to 21. And so the fund balance policy currently, as it stands, is at least 10% of the general fund expenditures and transfers. And so if you go to the next slide, and show that we more than meet the compliance of the current fund balance policy. However, I think we need to, would like to revisit the fund balance policy as it stands. Best practice is having a fund balance operating reservation between 15 to 18%. And so if we were at that level, we would still have excess fund balance available for use. Also, as a reminder that the unassigned fund balance does not include the assigned emergency reserve fund of 3.5, nor the subsequent year budget of approximately $1 million. So we are in very good financial situation. And so the next slide, I want to focus more directly on the general fund. So the financial results at a high level, as we see for the budget, we actually, just going down to the bottom line, is that we actually budgeted for use of fund balance of about $1 million. The actual results is that we are going to be contributing $8.5 million to the fund balance for the general fund. Okay. And so sometimes it's hard to see how the budget was balanced, looking at it from a financial statement approach. And so I just do some moving around and on the next slide and show it how we actually adopted the budget. And so for FY 2021, we adopted the budget for the operating revenues and the transfers in net change in fund balance for use of fund balance, which reflects all of the inflows or revenues that come into the city to then pay for all of the expenditures or outflows that we budget for. And so then the budget was balanced at 118.24 million. And then that's just maybe the actual amounts, which makes more sense on the financial approach. All right, then the next slide, we go briefly over the solid waste fund. And so just to see how over the years, the solid waste fund has struggled. The primary reason for that struggle is in 2018, the implementation of GASB 75, OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. There had to be a restatement of the balance. And they had a balance of, it was still, negative, but it was about 600,000. And the OPEB liability that we had to post on the financial statement was 8.76 million, which then brought that solid waste down into 9 million for their total net position, and still struggle to recover from that, and not seeing a path forward, recovering and staying at the same operating revenue levels. Their operating expense pretty much stayed level. During 2020 and 2019, the energy performance contract was sort of wrapped up in the solid waste fund, but now that's done. And so 2021 is basically the stable rate that it's going to be going forward. And will probably increase in expenditures. The next slide. The utility fund is in a very good, over the years, has been in a very good net position. As we see, the net position pretty much stays stable, but it is going down on the downslide without, of course, the thought process of a plan to continue to increase operating revenues. The 75.96 million net ending position includes 50 million in investment in capital assets. So that's not real liquid in net ending position. It's also about $1 million in debt service reserve as well. That's wrapped up in that number. So that leaves about 25 million in unrestricted for funding that's available for use. And so with the number of capital projects that are coming up and what they're working through currently, we have some available funding there. Stormwater, next slide, please. So stormwater, again, relatively new fund, began somewhere in 2018 into 2019. They are doing well, small fund. Their ending net position is 3.28. Again, it appears to be doing well and continues to tick up, but there are a number of CIP projects that are coming up as part of the FY22-23 budget. And so my final slide. And so the audit, we have a clean audit opinion. We do have one repeat finding. It's been a challenge. The financial closing reporting is a repeat finding. Some of the things that we are doing, we have implemented from last year, which is that we eliminated that third-party software, which added a level of complexity to the year-end process, as well as some additional reporting and some additional reconciliation processes. So that has been eliminated. Disengaging or stopping that software and re-engaging back more directly with our current software, current ERP system, as well as building a more direct partnership with our auditors. That took some time and some effort and some added labor, but we are now that was a transition year, so FY 2021. In addition, we have a set of policies and procedures in place, the accounting policies and procedures that were adopted several years back. And so we are now more aggressively implementing those policies and procedures. They were not necessarily implemented prior to. They were written, they were there, they were adopted, but they were not implemented. And so now that's what we're doing going forward. The observations that the auditors had listed there as well, which is the utility billing rate. There was a solid waste rate that was in the system that was undercharging a resident when they found it through their testing. And so went back through that process and we implemented more of a separation of duties review, more detailed policy on that procedure, as I say, for that, so that there's no one person putting in the other rate and then clicking OK without a secondary review to ensure that we are being in compliance with the board requirements for the rate. And then the solid waste fund deficit, we just presenting that a few slides back. And so, of course, we're working through a master plan for their revenue streams, rate study plan, as well as looking at various things to try to shore up, come up with a plan to shore up that fund. So it's no longer in a deficit. It may take a while. That's that. And with that, barring any questions for me, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brandon Lopez so that he can give his presentation.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Lopez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. My name is Brandon Lopez. I'm a senior manager with Markham for your external auditors. And like Stephanie mentioned, we're here today to present the financial statements for September 30, 2021. One thing I do want to mention before I begin is just to give credit to David, Stephanie, and their team. It's a very cumbersome and very detailed process to go through this audit on top of their day-to-day duties that they go through with their team. So the credit to them is, I just want to make sure it's being given because we're here today because of them and their team. So with that being said, Stephanie did a great job going through the numbers. So what I want to do is do a high-level overview and go through the audit reports and some of the compliance reports. And if there's any specific questions, we can go through them together. So the first report that I'm going to go through, and if you're following along, it's on printed page 1 of the document, and it's the independent auditor. And in this report, it lets the reader know what we're giving a report on, what are management's responsibilities, and what are our responsibilities as the auditor. But most importantly is the second page of that report is the opinion. And like Stephanie mentioned, the city received a clean opinion, an unmodified opinion. And it's really the only opinion you as a commission and as a city want to get associated. So we're very happy that they did receive a clean, unmodified opinion for this fiscal year. I'm not going to go through the numbers detailed. I just want to point out a couple of things that Stephanie mentioned in her presentation. There was a significant decrease in 2 large liabilities related to the net pension liability and the OPEB liability. And that is something that we expected to see, and we've seen it across the board in pretty much all the cities. And it really had to do with the investments of those plans that were put aside to pay future benefits. We all know that as of September 30, 2021, the market performed very, very well. So the investments of that plan performed very well. So essentially, your assets significantly increased while your liabilities increased, but not at the same rate. So that's why at the end of the year, we had a net liability that was a lot less than we had in prior years. So we've seen that across the board and was expected, and it's a great thing to see. And on top of that, like Stephanie mentioned, the city is in compliance with all the required contributions to the plan, which is very, very important. So we didn't see any issue in regards to that. And like I mentioned before, with this audit, it's a twofold audit. It's a financial statement audit, but also a compliance audit. So along with the financial report, we also have the audit report, but then we get into the reporting section, which goes into the different compliance reports. The first of them being on printed page 141, it's called the Yellow Book report. And because we're a government entity, we're required to perform the audit in government auditing standards. And in this report, if there are any issues that we encountered in internal controls or financial reporting, if there are any significant deficiencies or material weakness, we'd have to disclose that. In this report in writing. We can't do it verbally, it has to be done in writing because this gets submitted to the Florida Auditor General. And like Stephanie mentioned, we did have one significant deficiency related to the financial close. The deadline for these reports to be submitted to the Florida Auditor General is 9 months after year. We did meet that deadline, and that's a very good thing. But I always like to say, in the pursuit of perfection, we want to make sure we're getting this in a getting this done in a timely basis, and that means closing the financial books and records on a timely basis to make sure we're not just meeting those deadlines, but we're presenting information on a timely basis. And we've seen improvement over the years, and you might remember in the past, we actually had multiple significant deficiencies and a material weakness. Those items were addressed in the last couple of years, and most importantly, the material weakness that we had last year was addressed this year. So we're down to one significant deficiency, which is an improvement, and that's what we want to see going forward. And the goal is for next year, we don't have any of that. But for this fiscal year, we can do that one item. The next compliance report we have is in regards to the federal funding. As you're aware, the city receives both federal and state funding. And if they essentially expend over a certain threshold, they're required to go through what's called a single audit. And the city went under a federal single audit where we essentially take a look at the grants and the expenditures on the grant, and we're required to test certain programs. And based on that testing, we take a look at not just the expenses and making sure that they were spent on what they were supposed to be spent on, but also the internal controls over that process. And if there are any findings, any issues with those expenses or controls, we have to disclose that in this report. But I'm very happy to let the commission know that there were no such issues identified in regards to that single audit. So that's very, very good because a lot of the city's programs depend on those federal and state funds. So it's always great when you're submitting a report, that's a clean report. So very happy to let the commission know that. One other report that I want to mention and go through is what's called the management letter to the Florida Auditor General. And in that report, we're required to communicate several different things. If we encountered any issues during the audit or any disagreements with management, if there are any times where support was requested and wasn't provided, we have to disclose that. If there are any recommendations that we had, and as Stephanie mentioned earlier, we only had that one finding, and then we had two observations. And those essentially were the utility rate item that wasn't compliant, and also the solid waste. So those didn't rise to the level of a finding, right? They weren't significant deficiency or a material weakness. They were just an observation. It's something to improve upon that we want to make sure we communicate. And one other thing that we're required to disclose is we essentially go through this process, what's called a financial condition assessment. We take a look at the city. We take a 5-year trend of the operations and the financial information. Then we also compare that to your peers. And in that analysis, we take a look and we see how is the city doing? Is it on a downward trend? Is it on an upward trend? If there's any financial indicators that are identifying something very significant on a downward trend, we have to disclose that in this letter, and we disclose that to the Florida Auditor General. But based on that analysis, there were no such indications that rose to the level of concern that we would need to disclose. So again, that's a very good thing that we like to bring up and mention. There were no such issues identified as part of that process. So that covers kind of the compliance and financial audit reports that I wanted to go through. I know Stephanie went through the numbers, so I didn't know if you had any specific questions for myself or for Stephanie.
I have one. Well, I'll let Vice Mayor go ahead.
Thank you. I guess the first question is solid waste permits. I understand that we've had to restate it because of the GASB 75. What plans do we have to fix it?
So I'll just mention one thing, and then I'm sure Stephanie can mention something else. In regards to GASB 75, like you mentioned, that first year of implementation, in the past, that liability was never recorded. So one thing that the city did already do, and I know that she's going to mention some other things, that first year we actually had a recommendation because I guess sometimes once you see that big number, you kind of, you know what, let's revisit this. And the city went through and took a look at those benefits and kind of revisited and revised essentially what the city was going to be paying as far as the premiums, like their portion, and versus what is the employee going to be paying. So that there was one step that was taken, and I'm sure Stephanie can mention anything else that the city wants to be doing going forward.
So one of the things that we are doing actively involved in right now is the master plan, rate study plan for the solid waste fund. And so I think we were going to be presenting something, probably not in time for the budget cycle, but this would be sometime during the budget of FY 2023. And it will outline some rate options and plans to shore up the solid waste fund over a course of time. You know, going to be a big hit, but there's some things to improve upon to bring in the revenues that relate to supporting the fund in its entirety.
And if I could,
The only gains that we've really seen is just because the stock market is going.
well, we've done quite a few as it relates to the solid waste fund and their operation. We've done a lot of cost containment over the past couple of years. We've done some route optimization. I removed about a $1 million to $1.2 million operational burden off of that fund through the sanitation division, as well as removing recycling from the operation, which was one time a small offset to the cost, and then obviously turned into being more expensive than what disposal is, and really hasn't had any much of an improvement to this point. So we've done a lot of cost containment up to this point. We've still seen a steady increase to our disposal rates since the term of the contract of that particular contract. We do have some of the lowest disposal rates around right now. But even with that, I will tell you that we have had recent conversations with the contractor that he's not sure about his viability to hold those rates for us much longer due to the cost increases that he's seen in the industry related to inflationary transportation costs, fuel and other commodities that they deal with. So we've done what we can to maintain those costs, but we are taking a good hard look at the operation itself to come back to the city commission with some well thought out recommendations and options for them.
I just hope that the only recommendation is increasing the cost for the citizens. I hope that's not the only recommendation. But we have some other things. The other thing I want to point out is I've been up here since 2019, and every time I get this, we fall back on, well, the reason we were late was because of software issues and the ERP program. And I know we may have brought it up during the budget meetings, but we really got to stop blaming software issues and find a solution. Because I you are extremely credible and you've done a tremendous job. I don't want to take anything away from that. But this is the 4th year in a row that it's a software issue, and that's why we're late. So I hope this year we find some kind of a resolution to accurately reflect the professional that you are. Thank you.
Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. Pardon me, I'm going to piggyback off that point too, that I'm disappointed. Again, there's a repeat, pardon me, finding on the financial close. And I told Ms. Tinsley I give her a pass this time because this is for the year ending September 30, 2021. And she came on board, before that. But next year, it's a different story if this is on there. I mean, this is over and over. But to Markham, you guys have, Ms. Tinsley has been here for a short period of time, but you've been here the entire time this is going on. Can't you kick us more and saying, hey, you've got this repeat finding, you're going to get this repeat finding again? What's your role in all of this?
That's a great question. And one of the things that this finding relates to is as far as the actual financial close, meaning the closing of the books and records. And there's a lot of information that goes into that process, but we gotta make sure we remain independent, right? There's certain duties that management has to take over, and we can't as part of the audit process. And the reason being, we can't audit our own work. But what we can do is assist the team and teach them and give them the tools and the guidance. And one of the things that we did this year with not just Stephanie and also Sharon and their team, actually sat down with them and kind of gave them a little overview of certain different types of transactions that we have been kind of seeing over and over again that were being miscoded, misrecorded, and kind of gave them that little, essentially like CPE training and kind of going through, these are the types of transactions, this is how you process them, these are the debits and credits. At the end of the day, we don't like to be here presenting in June and July numbers from September. But like I mentioned, we have to make sure we remain independent, but we got to do what we can to beef up their team and teach them so that way they can see that progress for this upcoming year. Our goal next year is not just to meet that deadline, but exceed it as well. But we can only do so much, and we're doing our part. And we do think that over this last year, we've learned a lot, and so has their team. And I think next year we can make sure we meet that deadline.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I hope to have a different conversation next year. But this is a resolution to accept and adopt the CAFR. And if you go to page, I had a conversation with the city attorney, because this is not my recollection, and he's going to correct me if I'm wrong if I'm again, or someone will. Page 72 of the CAFR on the contingent liabilities. This is with respect to the FEMA money. If you remember, you know, we had the 1.9. So this probably isn't really for you, but the 1.99 million clawback from FEMA. And we ended up, you know, that's where FEMA took our letter and put it, or the state put our letter in the drawer, and we had to end up suing, and we lost. And so out of that, it says the city and FEMA came to an agreement to offset the over expenditures against current claims. I don't remember that. I don't remember the city and FEMA coming to an agreement. I think it was more FEMA telling us this is what's going to happen. But I don't want anyone that reads this to think that, you know, this commission or me in particular agreed to that on a go-forward basis, because then it says as of September 30, 2021, the city has an outstanding amount of $883,000 to be utilized against future claims. That means we have $883,000 in future claims for storms to get to zero. It's basically what that's saying. So I don't remember agreeing to that. So I don't know if there's a way to amend this or caveat this, because if I vote saying I accept and adopt this, that's not my recollection of what happened.
Yeah, I'll speak to the factual circumstances. As you all may recall, we did join up with City of Lake Worth, as well as the City of Pembroke Pines. We're similarly situated with clawback actions from FEMA. We hired the same outside counsel who did litigate the case in federal court. We did lose. Commissioner Drosky is correct that we didn't enter into an agreement, and it wasn't voluntary. And my understanding is FEMA got their money back from the state. They've already recouped their money, but then the state was out money. And so the state then, when they make their next payment, let's say for a subsequent storm, that they just take their money from that. And I believe they've taken half of that, but they've now taken the whole thing. Okay. But you are correct, Commissioner Drosky. There was not an agreement in place for that to happen. And I'll leave it up to the auditors in terms of, you know, how to address that in the cap.
So this document is an issue document, but if there's a revision in the wording that the commission would like, we can go back and revisit that specific wording on that specific page. That won't alter our audit opinion. That won't alter the date of the issue report. One thing I just want to mention, this was already submitted to the Auditor General to make sure that they met the city met their deadline. But if there's something on a specific page that the commission would like to make a change on, we can assist with that.
Okay. Well, I, for one, would like that to happen. So I guess City Attorney, we can make a motion to approve, but what with a caveat to revisit page 72?
Yeah, I think that's fine to address it. I mean, but by the way, now that I'm thinking a little more, I mean, we do enter into an agreement when we accept the money. So I don't know if that was the reference, like there's an agreement that does allow them to do this, but it wasn't voluntary after the fact. So, but I think to your point, Commissioner, what you proposed is fine to move forward, and then we can explore it.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, for those of you who may not know, what happened many years ago, there was a hurricane. We did everything we were supposed to do with FEMA. We got approved what we were submitting for FEMA for reimbursement. They signed off on it. We did everything in a timely manner, sent it up to the state. The state stuck it in a drawer and sat on it until it got past the deadline. And then the federal government came back years later and said, oh, by the way, that money you got that we signed off on and said you could get, we want back now. And started shaking the couches and finding any coins they could and shook loose. I think this goes back to Wilma.
Wilma,
Goes back to Wilma. It tells you how long ago it was. So we've been fighting it for a very long time with other cities because other cities ran into the same problem. For whatever reason, we did not win our case in court, and now they've decided to put us on the hook for that. So I don't think it's not anything the city did wrong. We just every individual thinks it gets screwed by the federal government. Guess what? We get it as an entire city. We got the same shaft this time. So I have some concerns. First off, just give some perspective on what these findings mean. What a repeat finding and a significant deficiency. I've sat up here long enough to see when I first started seeing these CAFRs come through, that I believe we were in the leaning towards the amount of about 20 findings in the past, in which the city of Deerfield Beach needed to make improvements on. I believe you guys have been here long enough to date back to that. We're a long way from that. We have two that seem to be on the verge of correcting. But one is the repeat finding. It is a concern for me. And while it is important for us to meet those limits, I think it's important for people to put that in perspective of what that means. City of Gainesville just got hit with 14 findings, and they've got some serious issues when it came to their CAFR for the year. Every city is going to have these things. I am concerned with the repeat finding, and much like my colleagues have stated, look, I understand there have been some issues, and I think we've been patient, and we understand the challenges that we have. We've had a change in leadership that I think has led to a lot of these things being cleaned up, and why we have so few issues when it comes to our audit. Despite what you'll hear some people say, oh, the city's near bankruptcy, which I remember, I think I heard that 5 years ago, that in 3 years we'd be bankrupt. And the same person says the same thing every year, we're supposed to be bankrupt. It's like the doomsday philosophy that just doesn't happen. They say, well, it's really next year's the end of the world. So we're clearly very far away from that. But my patience is going to run out if this finding shows up again, city manager. And I think there's no more excuses at this point. I hope this financial close and reporting issue is resolved. As pointed out, I brought it up during the budget hearing. The ERP system and our lack of getting a real handle on that is a problem, and I think that would resolve this. Are you confident as our auditor that the actions that we're proposing to move forward on are going to help solve this and make sure that this finding is not on our next audit?
So what I mentioned before, I do believe that what we provided them this year, if they can take that, experience and that knowledge and that training that we provided, and they apply that to the year. And the same thing also, this process that we have isn't just a 3 month, 4 month, it's really a relationship that we have throughout the year. So if they take advantage of that and call us if they have questions, if they have a new transaction, something maybe it's unusual that they don't normally see on a day-to-day basis, they call us and they take advantage of the resources that we provide, we do think that this finding can be addressed if they take advantage of those tools and that knowledge that we provided.
Excellent. You guys have been doing this for a long time. You handle many other municipalities. From a financial standpoint of where we sit with this audit in comparison to other cities, where do we rank? Where do we fall into that?
I would say somewhere in the middle, given the different issues and the different transitions in the finance team and all that stuff. So not the best, not the worst, somewhere in the middle, but there's always room for improvement, right? Like I mentioned before, that I strive to perfection. Like you mentioned before, when we first started, we're talking about 15, 20 different findings. So we've seen that progress along the way, which is what we want. There's very little audits where we finish and we get to something that there was nothing that we encountered. There's very few audits that we've come across. But what we do want to see is improvement. We don't want to see the same findings year after year after year. So if we continue to see that progress, I'd be happy to be here on this stage to let the commission know next year, no such issues.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Preston.
Yes, Mayor, I know that there has to be a concern, because I take a little bit different view in that, you know, when you have something that is failing, especially when it's due to finances, first order of business to me is recognition of those financial challenges, wherever they may be. And then, you know, once they are identified, we have to be specific in that, specific identification of those issues. And then a plan to be able to deal with those things. Ultimately, what we're asked is this: is it going in the right direction? And I think that when I listen to Ms. Tinsley and I listen to Mr. Lopez, listen to these things, though it may not be as fast as I would like to see it, I still have to ask the question: is it going in the right direction? The real question, challenges would be if we sitting here and we couldn't say that, we say it's worse, or is it exactly the same? Now, I might be wrong, but what I've seen is improvement, and I tend to think that it is trending it in the right direction. It's going in the right direction. So why am I mentioning that? We say next year, and we use that as a barometer, and we say, we need to see something next year. They could work very hard in doing that, and we can see there could be some improvement, but they may not necessarily meet, a specific goal. Hopefully that will happen. But how I deal with this, as I said, I look at, is it trending? Is it going? Is it starting to turn? Is it going in the right direction? And, and I'm confident that's what's happening. The presentation by Ms. Tinsley was good, very good. Mr. Lopez follows it up, very detailed. I don't come away with a real concern, or I'm not afraid that something's not going to happen in our favor for the city. But I do understand that we are in a position where we have to watch these things. But I'm just saying, ultimately, we just have to look and think: is it starting to turn? Is there a concern from the city manager's office to say that we're looking at this and we're dealing with these issues? We see the same things that you see, and here's what we're doing in specificity to deal with those things. And so when I hear the reports that I heard tonight, I'm what would be the word? I'm enough.
This repeat finding has been on the books now for how many years straight?
I think it's about 4 years.
Okay, that's where my concern is. In 4 years, 1 year I understand, 2 years we made a complete department head change, and really kind of changed the way we do things in that department. We're on year number 4 of the same finding there. To me, I think that's significant. That's sufficient time to solve this problem, even with the regime change we've had. And I think to me, I've been hearing that we're trending in the right direction for 4 years now. So that's why my patience is thin. It's not with Ms. Tinsley, because she's relatively new in that position, and I think she's certainly getting us towards where we need to be. I will say this: since I've been up here, we are a long way from where we used to be back in the days where we could get 20 different findings. The other 2 findings, you're always going to find something, like you said. This repeat one, 4 years, is concerning because of the repetitiveness of it. Beyond that, I think we're doing pretty good. So, thank you.
Mayor, that was an action item to accept the CAFR.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it.
Okay.
And Commissioner Grosky hit his button.
Well,
so
I
I'm hoping-
did, but I had to go to the public. Did we do the public? That's why I turned my light
Oh,
off.
okay, I'm sorry. Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Okay, not seeing anyone, I'm going to close it to public.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion from Commissioner Preston. Just something you want to say, Commissioner Goss?
I just want to make sure that we were revisiting that language on page 72. So can I
Well,
make-
that, because I understood the city city attorney, that's going to be a part of it. So I'm making a motion based on when he said that we could specifically look at that.
So a motion to approve and to direct staff to address the issue with the FEMA language that speaks to the agreement. Okay.
Motion to approve with what he said.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Preston, seconded by Commissioner Grosky, reluctantly apparently. And do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
and Mayor Dan.
Yes.
Okay, item number 16 is a resolution of the city of Deerfield Beach, Florida, relating to the provision of fire rescue services, facilities, and programs in the city of Deerfield Beach, describing the method of assessing fire rescue assessed costs against assessed property located within the city of Deerfield Beach, directing the preparation of an assessment roll, authorizing a public hearing, and directing the provision of notice thereof, and providing for an effective date.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. This evening, we have a presentation related to the updated fire assessment fee study that was conducted by our consultants, GSG, as well as some recommendation for the rate for fiscal year 2023. The last time that we looked at the rate was about 3 years ago, and there have been a number of things that have changed since that time. So we have had some discussions individually with you to provide you with the information that we have received throughout that study, as well as the methodology used and the methodology used in making the rate recommendation that is on the resolution, the preliminary rate resolution for this evening. The second reading would come with the budget hearings in September. With that, I would like to introduce our consultant. Who I honestly did not recognize in person, so I apologize.
No problem. I had Curly here when you saw me on that. And good evening. Sandy Newbar, from Government Services Group. We've been doing your fire assessment for many years now. You've had a fire assessment for many years. To keep you legally defensible, we recommend that you update it every 3 to 5 years, which you diligently do. So this year we updated it again, and so I'm here to present our findings. Next slide, please. Right now you have, these are your rates, your residential rate, which is one that everybody can understand. So that's why we talk about residential rates. Your residential rate is $235 per dwelling unit. And then your non-residential rates are based on a tier basis, based on the square footage of the non-residential structure. Next slide. So what we do is we develop a 5-year average budget. We also, your fire assessment can only be used to fund fire protection services. It cannot be used for EMS services. So what we do is we take your total budget and we take out the EMS costs. And then we develop a 5-year average assessable budget so that we can smooth out the level of the rates instead of going up and down as your budgets do. So we develop 5-year average rates based on the assessable component of your fire department budget. You can fund $23,376,000 from your for your fire assessment program. And so the rates that you're going to hear tonight, the percentages that we're going to talk about, are going to be based off of this $23.3 billion. Next slide. So that you understand where you're at right now, this is the demand percentages of the calls. Again, it's only fire component. So right now, your residential was demanding 63.21%, and this is based on the 2019 study that we did. Commercial was 18.02%, industrial warehouse 4.92%, and institutional 13.85%.
The reason I show you this is because you're going to see a shift in the demand, and that this, again, is your legal defensibility. Whoever's demanding your services should pay for their services. So the next slide. So to update your study, we looked at your 2021 calendar year call data to see who's demanding what services. And what we found is your residential is demanding more services than they were in the past. So they're demanding 65.8% of your services, or another 2.59%. Your commercial went down a little bit. They're only demanding 16.02% of your services. Industrial warehouse went up slightly to 5.25% of your services, and institutional went down a little bit to 12.93% of your services. So this is the key to keep you legally defensible, whatever portion of your budget that you want to fund, whether it's the $23 million or something else. It needs to be sliced in these pieces of pie to keep you, because this is how the services are being demanded. Next slide, please. So then we look at the parcel data, and we look to see, I'm sorry, this is the math. So this is the math that we do. So we say, okay, 65.8% of your calls are going to residential. Out of that $23.3 million, $15.3 million has to be funded from residential. $3.745 million has to be funded from commercial. 1.226 has to be funded from industrial warehouse, and institutional is $3 million. That's at the 100%. Next slide. Now, so then we look at what's fair and reasonable, how to charge each property. We're not changing anything from what you're currently doing. Residential will be on a per dwelling unit basis. Your non-residential, which is commercial, industrial warehouse, and institutional. Institutional is things that you would think of are for public good, public purpose, schools, nonprofits, hospitals, things like that. So those are on the square foot tiers, capped at 50,000 square feet. Next slide. So then we look at how many units you have in each category. So we saw that your residential demand went up a little bit. So did your units, but when we get to the rates, you'll see they didn't go up enough to keep the level of residential rates. So you added about another 900 residential units, and then this is the makeup of your non-residential units. Next slide, please. So the 100% rates, these are the maximum that you could charge, is $372 per dwelling unit, and that's to fund the $23.3 million. Then what you do, you've done a policy decision in the past to exempt government properties. There is a collection issue with government properties, so most of our clients do exempt government properties. You can't put them on a tax bill, so you can't. You can send them a separate bill and ask them to pretty please pay. You can sue them and get a piece of paper that says they have to pay, but whether they choose to pay or not is a different story. The other exemption that you do provide right now is an institutional tax exemption. What that means is those buildings that are of institutional use and that are wholly tax exempt, you've opted to exempt them. That is totally a policy decision. Most of our clients, about 90 to 95% of our clients, do exempt institutional tax exempt from the fire assessment. But again, it is a policy decision. You can put the institutional tax exempt on the tax bill and there wouldn't be a collection issue. It's just a public policy issue. So between those two buy downs, it's about at the 100% rates, it's about a $2.3 million buy down, which has to be funded from the general fund or some other legally available funds. You can't shift that burden over to those that are paying because that wouldn't be fair. So at that $23 million, you would net about $21 million. This is not staff's recommendation to go to the 100%, but we just like to know this is what it costs you to provide fire protection services to your residential and non-residential property owners. Next slide. So, in keeping with the same leveling that you've done in the past as you implement and the leveling of the total budget versus the accessible budget, these rates are what staff is recommending. It's $309 per dwelling unit, which is about a $74 increase over what they're currently paying. And it's going to generate about another $2.7 million. Keep in mind, these are the rates that go on the tax bill. When anything is collected on the tax bill, just like your regular taxes, if you pay in November, which most people who have their taxes escrowed in their tax bill, they would get that same discount that they get with the tax bill. So they would get a 4% discount. Like I said, most banks that have it through their escrow do pay in November. So that would bring that $309 rate down to $296.64. That's if they paid early. If they didn't pay until March, it would be the same $309. Next slide, please. So this is another option that you have. Again, it's your policy decision what rates you want to charge. This would be, say, to increase the residential rate by $60 or $5 per month. And that would be a $295 rate. This would generate you about another $2.5 million.
Per month or by a year?
It's $295 a year or $5 more a month. Instead of the $74, what staff is recommending, this is just another option that somebody wanted to see. So that would, gross revenue would be about $18.5 million, net 16.69. So then to maintain the same, just so you can see, it's good to understand apples to apples, so you can understand how that changing of the demand impacts your rates. So if you were to keep it revenue neutral to the city, generating that $16 million in gross revenue, the residential would still go up to $257. It would still go up $22 a year because of that increased demand that residential is putting on the fire department. So that's what this rate scenario gives you is a revenue neutral to the city. Of course, it's not going to be revenue neutral to the property owners. So that would be a $257 per dwelling unit rate. Next slide, please.
You're gonna need one more next slide. I don't think it was updated. This is there. If you just go back to one slide, please, just to display the rate of the 257 that you just explained. That's okay.
Okay, so that was the 257 that I just explained, the revenue neutral to the city. The next slide. So if you decided that you didn't want to raise the residential rate, you would actually lose revenue from the fire assessment. It would actually generate about $1.27 million less to keep the residential rates at $235 and then the non-residential rates at where they fall. Next slide, please. So that you can understand the impact. So I've been giving you the gross impact. This breaks out the impact. The 100% is that $372 per dwelling unit rate. The institutional, the churches and nonprofits cost you about $1 million to exempt them at those rates. Your government is about $1.3 million. The 83%, which is where staff is recommending that you adopt, the churches and nonprofits are $856,000. That's the buy down. And government is $1,083,000. And then you can see the impact of the others. This just gives you so you understand what those policy decisions cost.
Just for clarity, just to make sure, because I've been here long enough to see when we attempted to make a switch to actually charge the nonprofits and churches the fire assessment fee, and see that swing backwards. You can't charge them the same as residential. You have to treat them on a square footage,
correct,
just like you do everything else.
And so this institutional tax exempt,
Right.
what it does is it only exempts the institutional buildings. It doesn't exempt So like if a church owns, the pastor's house, that right now is not paying taxes because it's it's owned by a nonprofit, but it's not an institutional use, so it doesn't get that two-prong exemption. So that house would be charged, but the church building itself would not.
Right, so to give you an idea, I believe it was probably 8-9 years ago that the city commission decided that we were going to do that towards, you were here.
No, I wasn't
Oh,
here,
you
but
weren't here,
I was there in Margate about 5 years ago.
Yeah. So we did that. So to give you an idea, this was back when the rate, I think, was $125 a year. Based on square footage, St. Ambrose is going to be hit with about a $65,000 a year fire system. Because it's based on square footage. So we said, well, can't you just charge them the same as a residential to help us recoup some of these costs? We can't do that.
Because it's
So-
not fair and reasonable, because you're charging them different. Why wouldn't you charge some other building that's in the same situation the same
Right.
way? You can't do that. You can't pick and choose how you want to charge everybody, because that's not fair and reasonable.
Yeah, there's a lot that's not fair and reasonable to this, so. I just wanted to explain that, to give you guys some back history in case you want to explore going down that path.
And I think, and I did, just so you understood how much it would impact at the $309 rate, if you decided not to charge, or only, so the exemption, the level of the exemption is a policy decision too. You could do it 100%, you could do it 50%, or whatever. So what I did is I looked at it and I said, well, if you only wanted to exempt the churches and nonprofits at 50%, it would reduce your residential rate by $7. So that's about how much it's costing. So then the whole 100% would be about $14. So just so you understand how that exemption would impact the residential rates.
Excellent, thank you.
Can we stay on that slide for a second, please? I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
no,
before
you're fine.
we switch. So the 100% rate would be 372. I'm going, the
Yes, the
percentages,
100% is
100% equals
$372.
372.
The next one is the 309.
309 is the 83%, right?
Right. And then
The
the
79.3.
295
is what?
is the
that
295 residential dwelling unit.
And what is the logic for that number?
Somebody wanted to see just raising it $60.
Well, who's somebody?
You?
I'm asking. It's
So
a
I guess
public
it wasn't
hearing.
you, it wasn't me, it must be one,
With myself.
okay.
Is there a basis or logic for that? Because I understand how the other numbers, the city manager
The
came up with
logic
the other
for
numbers.
that is inflation is going through the roof. We're taxing the residents a lot. Their dollars are shrinking tremendously. So I'm looking at different options to lessen the impact on the residents as much as we possibly can. I understand we haven't had a rate increase in a while, but I'm also understandable to the residents. Some of our residents are on fixed incomes. And again, a $5 increase, while still being a lot, is palatable. And if they pay that in September, November, they also get a discount on that, which also helps them. The city cannot continue to subsidize this. But if we can help the residents any way that we can, that's why I was looking at other options.
Okay, we can debate that at the end. I just wanted to get into it while we're going across the chart. So then the 69
Is the 257.
is the
That's the-
257 and the 63 is the 235.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just making sure I have everything straight.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is the slide that I was telling you about that shows the progression and the increases in the rates over the years. In 2002, it was at $49 per dwelling unit. Then it went up slightly, 2008 to $99, then 2011 to $135, 2014 to $175, and then there it stayed for about 5 years. Then in 2020, you went to $235, and it's been there for 3 years. So now we're updating it. So using that same stair-stepping progression in the rates, the next progression would be the $309 residential rate. Next slide, please. This is a little bit hard probably to see, but this shows you the other Broward cities and their rates. And they range from $690 per, these are the residential rates again, because it's, everybody understands a dwelling unit. So they range from $690 per dwelling unit down to $129.85, with the average being right there at $308.77, right about where staff is recommending that they want the city to be at that $309 rate. So you can see, so that's about the middle part. These are also based on last year's rates because we don't know what this year's rates are because they don't make that decision until September. Same with you guys. So some of them I do know that they are recommending an increase, but this is just based off last year, so you can see. Next slide, please. So then the schedule, tonight, you adopt your preliminary rate resolution. That's just like when you set your millage, it's the highest and maximum that you can go for that year. Again, this is an annual decision. In the past, you guys have kind of stayed stagnant for a few years and then gone up. But it is an annual decision which you guys make every year. So tonight, you're going to be setting the maximum rates that you want to consider for this year, as well as the exemption. Then it's going to go on the trim notice like it does every year, and you'll publish it in the newspaper. Then you're going to come back on September 14th, where you're going to make your final decision and adopt your annual rate resolution. That's when you can adopt as you adopted tonight, or you can go lower, but you can't go higher for this year. Then once you adopt those rates on September 14th, then they'll go to the tax bill, and then the tax bills will be mailed out in November. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. And I apologize for earlier. I should have waited to the end to ask my question about that slide. So on slide 15, I just noticed this for the first time tonight, the Broward residential rate comparison. There's 25 cities listed, but there's 31 in Broward. What are the other 6? Do the other 6 not have a fire assessment?
Probably don't have them, and or they've consented to do the Broward County. I don't know all of them because I don't work with all of them, but I know they can, if Broward County is providing their services, they could consent. Does Broward County have one?
Yes.
Okay, so they consent to be included in the Broward County. And that's what some of our others, they do. They say, you provide our fire services, will allow you to impose your assessment in our city.
All right, that's the only question I have. I understand the information. I look forward to debating it with my colleagues.
Thank you.
What is the Broward County one?
Unincorporated, 190.
Um,
But then they may have to supplement it with other.
No, I'm sure.
You don't know that, don't know what their agreements are.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. To my colleagues, I'll say this. Keep in mind, and I know you guys probably know this, but it's really, I guess, for the public as well. There are a lot of residents in Deerfield Beach where this is their only amount they're paying to the city for any services, period. You look over in areas like, and I don't like to pick on them because one, they're not here, and two, their representative is here tonight. But Century Village with tax exemptions that based on the price of their units and based on some of the other exemptions they'll get, they might not pay any taxes at all, period, with the exception of this fire assessment fee. This is the only fee that hits everybody equally. It doesn't matter what your exemptions are, where it falls. The one thing that's for sure is the fire assessment fee gets charged. Am I correct in saying that? So, while, and like I said, I've been here long enough to see us try to expand it into other areas that the pendulum swung as it usually does with a backlash that went completely the opposite way, which I didn't really agree with. But, while this is a lot of money, it seems like a lot of money and a big jump. Obviously, we see what our price for providing these services in areas that, utilize them more than others, this is our only way of keeping a level playing field and making them pay for a service that they probably use more than other areas. So I don't like this increase. I have some concerns with it. I don't think, obviously 372 is not, the maximum is not something that I would support. I'm not even sure I can support what staff is recommending at 309, while I understand the justification for it. I have my concerns about it. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, when we do these calculations, they're done with here's what needs to be accomplished, and there's a service that's being rendered, and in order for the city to be able to have some functionality, there comes, you know, a recommendation. Like you said, the maximum, we're paying $235 now. At 372, that would be $140 increase. That's just too much. And when you think about the 309, that's a $74 increase. That means each household is getting $74. That's a lot of money. When we start to look at these things, what it does, what it can't calculate is the social environment. And there is a lot of issues with, you know, how much money is coming into a household, and then that amount of money that's going out. For the last 2 years, we have been hit tremendously with COVID, where on every spectrum, in every district, there has been less money that's made. And so our residents is not doing as well as they did 5-6 years ago. And if we were just to look single-minded and say, well, we're going to do this, that doesn't take into consideration the strain that this could have on individual households. And so that's where I struggle. Even at $74 an increase, $74, that's a lot. It really is. I know staff has recommended, and the recommendation is good, and I can see why staff is doing it, but it's still a lot of money. That's still a lot of money to place on our residents, you know, in our city. So it would be very hard for me to support that. I'm actually more leaning toward the revenue neutral, which is 257. And I'm comfortable there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Look, I mean, the cost of supplying these services isn't going down, it's going up more and more. And $75 a year, it's $6.15 a month. In the scheme of things, it's a little bit more, sadly, a little bit more than a gallon's worth of gas these days. It's not a lot of money. But I have a problem with the percentage jump up compared to what more we're taking in at where it's at now. I understand what we're trying to do and why we have to do it. But I struggle with it because I see what our increase has been, and yet I see how much more we're taking with the current fire assessment fee. That's where I have my biggest issue with from a philosophical standpoint. City Manager, you had something you want to say?
I did. Thank you very much, Mayor. I've listened to each one of you, and I do appreciate you understanding why the rate recommendation is 309, because it allows us to keep the same percentage of contribution of the fire assessment fee to the total fire rescue budget. And that was the rationale behind that. However, I do recognize and I hear your concerns, and I'm certainly not here to bargain or negotiate with the city commission on this. That's not the point of my discussion with you here right now. But I do want to say that I recognize the concerns, and also I appreciate you recognizing that the cost of the services have gone up, and they will continue to go up, hopefully, not at the rate that they did this year, of course, as that was much more excessive than we've seen in the past. But we do generally see the cost of public safety rise about 3.5% each year. I have looked at the option of the 295 with staff, just so you're aware. And the rationale behind that a little bit further, I think and I don't mean to put any words into Commissioner Hudak's mouth, but he looked at the increase from the previous time we increased and it was $60. So I think that's why he wanted us to look at that. And the revenue difference between the 309 and the 299 and the 295 is not immensely significant. But do consider that every dollar that, so that it's absorbable. Let me just say that. But I do also want to make sure that the City Commission is aware that any reduction in the contribution to the fire assessment fee is then pulling on your ad valorem tax revenue to provide other services to the residents of the City of Deerfield Beach that are supported by the general fund ad valorem revenue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll open this up to the public. We have the public care to comment on this item. Not seeing any, I'll close it to the public. Commission.
As I said there, to reiterate, it would be extremely difficult for me to go anywhere other than the revenue neutral. The suggestion is 257. Now listen, I understand exactly where we are, and this neutrality was based on we've had a few bad years, and it's just to impose this on our residents, to me, would just be a little tough. And so I'm more revenue neutral.
Yeah. Vice Mayor Hudak.
I recognize that the city costs are going up. I do recognize that inflation is tapping our residents tremendously. But I recommended, or I requested the 295 figures exactly for what the city manager said. And I'm gonna make a motion for the 295 level to raise the assessment to 295.
Commissioner Grosky.
I, like the rest of you, are struggling with this because one, the costs are going up. I mean, there's no avoiding that. So the lower the fire assessment fee is, the more burden or stress we put on the general fund. The higher it is, the more stress that we put on the residents and their pocketbooks. There's got to be a fine line. There's got to be a meeting point somewhere between those two demands. I think the revenue neutral of 257 just puts too much stress on the general fund. I think it's too low. I mean, this is a fee that is meant to even the playing field amongst all of the residents. So if you're going to get everyone to pay their fair share, this is the fee to do it. The 372 obviously is a non-starter for me, which is the 100%. I concur that the 83% rate, 309. I can add, it doesn't sound like there's much support amongst my colleagues for that. So I could do the 295 or some compromise below that, but the 257 is too low, in my opinion, to level the playing field for the competing demands that we have.
Look, bottom line is we as taxpayers are paying this bill no matter what it is. Fire assessment fee, general fund, it's all taxpayer dollars. It's all the same. So it is a matter of being able to make it a little more equal. I go back long enough on this that I have a problem with how fire assessment fees were first established, presented to the public. And historically, you saw that I think they started out at $75 and that's probably where our budget for the fire department was probably around $10 million. So times have changed. We're looking at the maximum to do tonight. We don't have Commissioner Parnas here to be entered into the debate. We do it at 257, which is where I'm moving to an agreement with Commissioner Preston. That doesn't give us any room to negotiate. We've essentially capped it right there. That's the maximum. As was stated tonight, we're establishing what the max would be. Anything else, we can go lower, we just can't go higher. So for future debates, and we've got a few more dates to address this. If 290, at 309, 295, it's the same. It's $14, it's an extra buck a month. It's not going to kill anybody. But if we want to go with 295 as being the max, I can support that to debate it later on down the road.
I'll second the vice mayor's motion.
Mayor, if I may, the vice mayor made a motion with respect to the number. I just wanted to see if maybe we could clarify that you're moving to approve the resolution with a $295 residential rate.
Yes.
And the second, Commissioner Drossy.
Still second, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
No.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Item number 16 is a resolution of the city of Deerfield Beach, Florida, relating to the provision of, Item number 17 is a resolution of the city of Deerfield Beach, Florida, relating to the collection of nuisance abatement services assessments, adopting findings of fact, directing the preparation of the assessment roll, providing for notice, and providing for an effective date. This is the nuisance abatement service assessments related to when there's code enforcement issues and there's a nuisance, and the special magistrate authorizes the city to actually go on and abate the nuisance and charge the cost to the property. And this is the mechanism that is used to recoup the city's costs in that regard by putting it on the tax bill.
Is that 2023? We're looking at 23,400. Why is it lower than what we're looking at in 2022? Looking at current activity on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I could tell you that the reason the 23.4 is what.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Brimlow, you have to identify yourself.
Oh, I apologize. Rodney Brimlow, Director of Public Safety. That 23.4 reflects the actual costs that were incurred during this year. So last year was a different number that it was a higher number because that's what was actually incurred to put onto the rolls. These are, for example, these are picking up debris, cutting lawn, painting buildings. So it's an actual cost. So it will vary by year.
So that's fiscal year 2023.
Correct.
That's what we're speculating is going to be 23,400.
This is work that was already done, abatements that were already done to put it onto the tax roll that they will then pay
for 2023. And we don't expect that number to go up higher.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is, of course, just the abatement activity, not the actual funds.
So the public's clear on what this is. This is something that I pushed for when I first got into office, but the city at the time, we were going through all the great foreclosure issues, and there was a lot of properties that weren't being maintained. So the city had to go in and maintain it. And we had no way to recoup that money. You had liens on it because of banks, because of foreclosures, and the city just lost out year after year after year. We put this forward, the commission approved it, and we put it on the tax rolls because it's the only way we made sure that we got it. So if work is done, if someone abandons a house, we go in to secure the house, whether it be covering up the pool, maintaining the property, whatever it may be. We make sure that we get recouped on that. Should the owner of that property, whether it be a bank or whoever owns it, they have to pay taxes on that. So that's a guaranteed way for us to get that money. So glad to see it's still bearing fruit and we're getting recouped our costs on this stuff.
It's actually an excellent way to do it. Because I mean, they do have other outstanding fines, but at least on the money that the city is spending to make these properties safe, at least we're recouping those.
Yeah, thank you. You've been going after it very hard, so I appreciate that. Is there anyone from the public who care to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I'm going to close it to the public. Vice Mayor Hudak?
Just what is the logic behind the cost being half what it was last fiscal year?
It's based solely on what the city spends. So so in other words, if you look, for example, at one of the properties, if it's $355 to remove the 6 cubic yards of debris that was there, that's the cost that it is. So when this was started last year, there was probably a lot more that was done.
Okay.
So that number would have been higher. But this is actual money that was spent by the city to rehabilitate or to make these properties safe.
Thank you.
Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Hudak, seconded by Commissioner Drosky. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
and Mayor Lance.
Yes.
Okay, we covered 18 and 19 at the beginning of the meeting. We are now at comments by administration and legal. I just have one comment tonight. Commissioner Drosky mentioned at the last meeting the enactment of House Bill 105 with respect to the ability for local governments to regulate smoking on public parks and public beaches. So I just wanted to point out that my office is working on drafting an ordinance in coordination with the city manager to bring forward for your consideration. I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you.
Good evening. Just one comment for tonight. I just want to mention that as a result of the direction provided at the last commission meeting, code enforcement has been visiting some of all of our billboard locations and addressing any observed violations with property owners. Thank you.
Okay, we are now on city commission business. Item number 20, an ordinance of the city commission of the city of Deerfield Beach, Florida, amending section 66-58, parking prohibited on certain streets and commercial vehicle parking restrictions of the city code of ordinances to prohibit parking on Northwest Eller Street between Northwest 2nd Court and Northwest 2nd Terrace, providing for conflicts, severability, codification, and an effective date. And this is first reading.
This. Matt?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, this item was requested by Commissioner Preston. This was an area that he saw was a problem, and I allowed him to speak to that. I'd rather just talk a little bit more about the resolution, but this will allow us to enforce no parking in this particular area of the roadway. I also want to mention that we did install some curbing there, Commissioner Preston, that will also prevent the parking in that swell area as well.
Anyone, Commissioner Preston?
Yes, I just want to say, briefly, Mayor, to my colleagues, in an area, as a part of my district, you have these 18-wheelers just parking, and I know for a fact that BSO has gone out a few times and try to resolve the issue. Problem is that when BSO is there, they comply. The minute that they go away, they park these big trucks, basically in the roadway, so that the people that live in the community don't really have access to the roadway. And the other side of that is some of these trucks stay on all night. They just run them so they can get out real quick and do what they need to do. So I just thank my staff for looking into this and understanding the concern, because it needs to go away. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on this item?
and school representative, 1090 Southwest Point Terrace, Deerfield Beach. Thanks, Commissioner President and Commissioner at large for this. And I just hope that they just continue to be vigilant regarding the 18-wheelers, just any and everywhere parked. And just continue to fine. I think just slap them with fines. And that's, I mean, the more warnings you give them this, you're gonna park somewhere else and do it again. I guess we have to give them warning first, but I would hope they wouldn't, because they know it's wrong. And it's just a matter of just, they need to be slapped with the fines, like they fine us for everything else. They need to be hit with a fine for parking in the residential areas. I mean, it's across from our churches, it's behind houses in our areas. On 14th Street, I saw a big white one last night, and it was just sitting on the side, 14th and 6th. And I'm like, okay, the truck is just like on the middle of the road. And I just don't, they know it's wrong. I just don't, I don't think they need warnings. I just think they need to just do something about it. And thank you for addressing.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Then we close it to the public. Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Preston, second by Vice Mayor Hudak. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
You are now at comments by mayor and city commission.
Okay, let's start with District 1.
No comment.
District 2.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank staff for the football camp, the Bright Scouty camp this past Saturday. You know, I just want my colleagues to really hear me on this, please. We can say thank you, but staff, I'm telling you, that they did a great job. They really did a good job of putting on this. Obviously, this young man, Bryce Gowdy, as you know, was from Deerfield Beach. And unfortunately, you know, tragically, he committed suicide. Had a tremendous career in front of him. And his mother continues to put this on the forefront. But when we're having some sort of an event, you know, it's how it comes off. And I'm telling you, staff has done a great job. And I sincerely want to thank the city manager and staff because it was good. I was a part of a panel last week, Friday. It was hosted by Nikki Mohan of Channel 10. And there were a lot of distinguished people on that panel. They were also talking about remedies and suggestions for mental health. And it does not go away. We have a lot of issues, not just in Broward County, but all over this country of young people having mental health issues. And we would like to prevent, you know, a situation like a Bryce Gowdy. I had seen the ESPN piece on him. If you haven't seen it, you should really go look at it. It was shown at this event this past Friday, and there were things in it that I didn't see the first time. It was really well done, and but we had this football camp, and staff did an outstanding job. There's going to be a District 2 community meeting on August 1st at 6 p.m. at the Hillsborough Technology Center. District 2 community meeting on August 1st, 6 p.m. Hillsborough Technology Center. We're going to be talking about some things that are concerning the Historical Society. And so I'd like to see as many people that can be there as possible. I know that some of my colleagues were at the 4th of July fireworks, and I actually timed it. I wanted to make sure that the citizens of Deerfield Beach are getting, getting the bang for their buck. And let me tell you, that was a tremendous show. It was a tremendous show. Let me tell you. However, I would ask the city manager to investigate a strange aroma was coming from the beach. No, just kidding. People all over the place. But it was a great event. I was glad that we could put that on for the citizens of Deerfield Beach. I've gotten so many comments on how good it was. So again, thank you, staff, for a great job. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. District 4.
I likewise would like to echo the sentiments regarding the Independence Day celebration down at the beach. The fireworks, probably the best show we've had, maybe ever. It was fantastic, and the finale was spectacular, to be honest with you. So please tell the fireworks manufacturer that they have a big task to outdo themselves next year on that one. But I want to thank staff for all of their efforts. It was a long day for staff, and my understanding is the cleanup went way longer into the night than anticipated. So everybody from parks, for every department that participated, to BSO, fire, BSO police, everyone that was involved, thank you, because there were a lot of people there that day that made that event successful and most importantly safe. So thank you for that. My next Saturday office hours is August 6th because we don't have another meeting this month. It's the first Saturday of August. You can contact the city manager's office. And lastly, I wish my colleague from District 3 good health and look forward to seeing him at the next meeting.
Here to that. I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting the loss of Jim Lusk. Jim was the guy that kept the Observer newspaper going and working with people like Rachel Galvin for many years. And we know a lot of people are upset that the Observer newspaper is gone, but Jim was kind of an unsung hero here within the community. It was a tremendous loss. And anybody who's attended our Founders Day parades, you'd see Jim, especially in the later years, in his wheelchairs across the way. So it's a big loss for all of us here, and Jim will be remembered and not forgotten. Ironically, one of the weird things that Jim took up with the Observer newspaper, some of you may remember this a few years back, was making sure that the massage parlors we have here in the community are doing the types of massages they should be doing and following all the laws. I'm going to ask BSO to make sure that that is happening at every establishment here in the city of Deerfield Beach. I'd also like to have staff look into the sprinkler system along Ventura. I think there's some issues there. If we can make sure we look into that. I will tell staff, I will like to say to staff that the feedback I've gotten from the residents of the 4th of July has been outstanding. Really echo the sentiments of a great job. But I really want to thank Chief Adam Hofstein and Chief Mike Brown for keeping our residents safe during a very difficult time. This is not an easy task. And for the people who said that they witnessed snipers up on buildings, they were the good guys. So appreciate all the hard work on that to both those staffs out there. I also want to thank our staff when it comes to the boil water notice that went out on Friday. It's always the worst thing that we hear about is when we've got to put out a boil water notice. It's such an inconvenience, it's such a problem and a potential health issue for the residents. It came from a well that was provided to us by Broward County. It supplied about 20% of the drinking water here. Am I accurate on that? About 20% of the drinking water here in the city. It was a reading that came from that county well to potentially affect us, and that's at a raw well. It's a raw reading. The reason that's important is because by the time any of that water would have gotten to us, it still has to go through our system. So it has nothing to do with any issues with our water plant. It had to do with a well provided by Broward County. It was there. Notices go out. I encourage everybody to make sure that they're signed up, in whether it be social media or however they want to do it. People are still going to complain that they didn't get the notice, and sometimes we have missed signals on that, but we try to get it out as fast as possible. There's a lot of coverage in the press as well. But I want to thank our staff for getting that word out. It's not easy. It's not a fun thing to do, but Rebecca Medina and her staff, and city manager, you guys did a really good job of getting that word out and making sure it got handled right. So thank you very much for that. With that, I believe that's all that I have. I'm sure I'm missing something. That's it.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn.